Yu Shi quietly glanced over at Si Huang and saw no signs of hostility on his face. A sweaty assistant pressed a button on the elevator and asked, "Which floor are you headed to?" Si Huang gave them a look to indicate that they were headed to the same floor. Then, Guan Li finally spoke up. "Are you going to the film set of The Sovereign Journey?" Si Huang scanned Guan Li's exquisite, refined face. The color of her eyes was pure. So pure that her eyes were pleasing to behold. Her lips formed a small smile. She didn't say much but did not come off as a dull person. That smile of hers rendered Guan Li, who had gotten used to the sight of handsome men, completely breathless. The entertainment industry was crawling with gorgeous men, but none of them was as pure as the one before her. That's right, he was pure, from his eyes to the essence of his aura. He was so pure that he naturally gave off a pleasing impression. He was a young man who was still living in the confines of the schoolyard, yet he did not carry the impetuousness and restlessness of a young man. "I've never seen you before. Are you new?" The corners of Guan Li's lips gently curved upward. The assistants and everyone else around her widened their eyes. Guan Li was well known for her Ice Queen image and had a cold personality by nature. Her temper wasn't any better either. She rarely ever spoke so gently to a first-time acquaintance, let alone smile at them. Even if that person's aesthetic value was off the charts, there shouldn't be such a huge difference compared to her usual treatment. Her assistants resentfully grumbled internally. Yu's eyes flashed with shock too, but he quickly concealed it. He added a note on his internal assessment of Si Huang. He was so unfathomable that he did not seem like a 16-year-old at all. Si Huang's pure and wholesome image had clearly left an impression on Guan Li. The pair continued to chat and smile at each other after stepping out of the elevator and making their way toward the film crew. They did not seem too close or too distant. The proximity between the pair was just right. However, as soon as they arrived on set, the pair sensed a peculiar atmosphere. They immediately understood when they saw the old man sitting next to Director Liu. Guan Li instantly wiped the relaxed expression on her face away, and her eyebrows tensed quizzically. Si Huang, on the other hand, simply raised her brow. Then, she remained calm and polite as she walked toward them. "Old Tai, this is Si Huang," Director Liu told the old man next to him, as he saw Si Huang and his manager walking toward them as soon as he lifted his head. This old man was the biggest backer behind The Sovereign Journey, and was also a veteran in the entertainment industry. The power and influence he had were unimaginable. He had silvery white hair, and there were 3 wrinkles on his forehead. However, his complexion had not lost its luster and seemed to be in pretty good shape. He was wearing a loose-fitting, dark blue tang suit and was holding a walking stick in his hand. He turned to Si Huang and Guan Li upon hearing Director Liu's introduction. The old man's gaze was not sharp but carried the deep wisdom of years of experience. This made a huge impact on Si Huang. She looked old Tai in the eye in a magnanimous manner, which was a stark contrast to Guan Li's immediate stiffness. This was because she had done nothing wrong and was therefore fearless. Si Huang and Guan Li greeted them as they walked toward old Tai and Director Liu. Both of them were modest and respectful. Old Tai had a steady gaze. "How old are you?" No one knew who he was talking to, so Si Huang and Guan Li both replied. 24, replied Guan Li. 16, said Si Huang. "Both children," old Tai responded. A hint of unease flashed across Guan Li's eyes. Even though it was true that she was a child compared to old Tai given her age, Si Huang, who was still a teenager, was different next to her. "Achong is a child," Si Huang replied with a smile. Old Tai's gaze immediately sharpened like a knife when he heard this. "Achong is the greatest product of Shulan's painstaking effort, as well as my gift to her. I will not have this gift blemished in any way." Si Huang was not frightened by his words. In fact, they served as further assurance for her. This had verified the knowledge that she had obtained from her past life. Shulan was old Tai's first wife, and the pair were deeply in love. Yu Shulan was a musician, and The Sovereign Journey was the only book she had ever written. She had poured all of her passion into it. According to the rumors, Yu Shulan had created the characters in the novel by drawing inspiration from her real-life experiences, especially Mr. Qinji, whom she had made the most effort to painstakingly create. The book wasn't supposed to be brought to life, but Yu Shulan's health had been deteriorating over the past few years. Old Tai wanted to fulfill her heart's desire and present her effort before her very eyes. The importance of this film had a lot of implications, so Si Huang had been determined to be involved from the very beginning. She also believed that Si Jian would have no way of stopping her anyway. Furthermore, as an actor, she sincerely loved the character of Mr. Qinji. "Since you're here, you can start shooting this scene," Old Tai said as he tossed the script to them. He didn't ask for Si Huang or Guan Li's opinion. His position or their positions as actors did not matter. They couldn't refuse an order from their boss anyway. "Move it, get into your costumes," Director Liu immediately barked. Everyone else set the scene. Old Tai's decision might seem to have come at the last minute, but Director Liu had known about it. That was why he had already set the scene and props earlier on, so there wouldn't be any last-minute mishaps. He secretly shot Si Huang a look, indicating that she needed to be on the ball. Despite witnessing Si Huang's acting prowess, he had not forgotten that Si Huang was still a teenager. What if she lost her nerve under Old Tai's pressure? That would be a catastrophe. Si Huang and Guan Li were hauled to their respective dressing rooms. Guan Li had a personal makeup artist in her entourage, but Si Huang had to use the makeup artist of the film crew. Her makeup artist was a young woman around 25 to 26 years old. She was holding a powder puff in her hand and was just about to powder Si Huang's face when she hesitated and clicked her tongue. "Ah, you're lucky you're young. This is exactly what a baby's skin looks like. What kind of skincare products do you use? Your skin is perfectly soft and smooth. I don't think we should use any powder on you at all, or you'd look too pale." Si Huang chuckled shyly in reply. The makeup artist stared at him in silence for 1 second, and her eyes sparkled as if she was bursting with inspiration. She changed the makeup that she was holding in her hand and meticulously applied Si Huang's makeup. However, a gentle touch-up would be a more accurate way of describing the process. She wasn't giving him a beauty-enhancing touch-up. She made him look sicklier instead. After all, Mr. Qinji had a frail body and was always in a wheelchair. His complexion shouldn't look as robust as Si Huang's. "I've never heard of anyone using makeup to make someone look uglier before. We'd usually try to enhance their looks. But a beautifully fragile, sickly patient can be attractive too. How I wish I could hold him in my arms and lap him up," the makeup artist exclaimed internally as she finished the job. Si Huang opened her eyes. "Is it finished?" Yes, just put on your costume and wig and you'll be all set," the makeup artist squeaked. "Thank you." Si Huang thanked the makeup artist as she got up and headed into the changing room. The makeup artist couldn't stand it anymore. "Si Huang, will you take a selfie with me when you're done?" "Of course." Si Huang agreed with a smile. The makeup artist was drowning in his soft, gentlemanly smile. Once Si Huang turned his back, she excitedly pulled out her phone and swiped to Weibo. "Ah, I finally met Si Huang in the flesh. He's such a good boy. Oh, I want to hold him and jump on him." Excited emoji, shushing face emoji. As a member of the Sovereign Journeys film crew, the makeup artist naturally had a lot of influence. Her official Weibo account had gathered quite a lot of fans too, as they could always catch celebrity updates on her Weibo account. Countless fans immediately began to comment after seeing this sudden update that was filled with "weird aunt" vibes. At first, someone even asked, "Si Huang? Who is this? Never heard of him. Maybe another newbie in the entertainment circle? Calm down, blogger, release that cutie and let me have him." Someone soon found Si Huang's video, and some people had even heard of him previously. "Granny not lady. Ah, my new Prince Charming. How have I not seen him before? Squatting in Star Youth Academy of Arts wouldn't hurt. Run, penguin egg, run. Hey, blogger, do you need an assistant on set? The kind that's been to university and can speak English fluently? A cabbage named Jen. Get a topless pic. No topless pic equals unhappiness, HMPH emoji. Little princess, little devil. Where's your integrity, blogger? His Highness is meant to be worshipped. How could you jump on him? I'ma bite you to death." The makeup artist was shocked as she scrolled through Weibo. She had initially thought that no one would have heard of Si Huang, as he had not made his official debut. However, there was an increasing amount of replies revolving around Si Huang. Some fans were even attaching links to his video. "His Highness? Is that the pet name that Si Huang's fans have given him?" The makeup artist couldn't help tapping on the link to find out more about Si Huang. "Wow!" A woman's scream interrupted the makeup artist, who was completely absorbed in the video. She lifted her head and saw a young man from an ancient era who had emerged from a cubicle. She was stunned. The Sovereign Journey had a strong team, as it was backed by Old Tai. The props and costumes were all very well made. As the focal point of the film, Mr. Shinji Akyung's costume was the same grade as the male and female leads' costumes. The young man, who was wearing a long, snow-white, straight-collar robe, stepped out of the door. The robe was draped nicely and smoothly over his body and had a dark green waistband which was held in place by a thin belt with a black jade pendant that had a small jade bell hanging from it. He was wearing a sheer jacket over the robe, which added a naturally graceful air to the youth. His black hair was tied to the back of his head, kept in place by a silver headband and showcasing his smooth and full forehead. His straight nose bridge, handsome eyes, and brows complemented each other flawlessly. His light pink lips formed a very subtle smile, so careless, so extraordinary that it seemed like he had come from a completely different world where he was a born aristocrat. At that very moment, he moved his gaze toward her. There was no deliberate show of arrogance, yet he seemed untouchable, as though he could never be subjected to sacrilege. "Your Highness, ah!" The makeup artist came back to her senses and let out an excited, shaky scream. Even Si Huang herself jumped in fright. She turned toward her helplessly and answered, She had no idea where she had heard that pet name. "Your Highness, won't you take a selfie with me?" the makeup artist asked, deliberately putting on a shy act. Bat your eyes," she urged herself. Si Huang laughed. "Haven't I agreed to it already?" She walked toward the makeup artist in a gentlemanly manner and asked, "How would you like to take the picture?" The makeup artist had been acting shy at first, but the gentle question of the young man, who was much taller than her, made her blush. Even her tone became more delicate. "You can just remain standing, Your Highness." Si Huang agreed. Of course, she couldn't possibly keep standing stiffly. As the makeup artist raised her phone and took the picture, she smiled. The makeup artist had no way of catching Si Huang's expression when the picture was taken. She finally had a look at the picture along with the friends around her, when a crew member called Si Huang away. The women clutched the left side of their chests and howled as they stared at the picture. "Quick, send it to me. I want to make this my screensaver." HMPH. Take your own picture and send it to yourself. The makeup artist complacently snatched her phone away, ignoring her friend's protests and happily uploading the picture on Weibo. "Don't ask how I wrecked my phone screen. Lick, 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 long live His Highness. My bed is now warm, picture attached." This time, the makeup artist watched with great satisfaction as her fans exploded into a frenzy. A few familiar ids were the first to appear. "Granny not lady. Ah, my mom asked why I'm kneeling on the ground, and I cried and answered, long live His Highness, long live His Highness." A cabbage named Jen. "You're so awesome, blogger, keep it up. Do we get a topless pic next? No topless pic equals unhappiness, HMPH emoji." Caramel pudding. "It's His Highness, His Highness, His Highness, His Highness, His Highness, at lovely cake at blueberry juice, look, it's His Highness." Lovely cake. "His Highness is so gorgeous, please let me visit your chambers, #sadface." Blueberry juice. "What do you mean, your bed, blogger? His Highness only has an order of knights." Caramel pudding. FCK. "Seriously, I was stunned by His Highness's godlike looks. I didn't notice the mention of her bed. Explain yourself, blogger, what have you done to His Highness? #sadface remove that hand of yours." Instead of walking out, Si Huang was wheeled out by Yu Shi. The crew had built this wooden wheelchair just for Mr. Shinji. The workmanship and style had turned out very nice. The entire set was immediately silenced when Si Huang, clad in an ancient costume, came into view, sitting in the wheelchair. Si Huang noticed another man next to Director Liu. The man did not have the face of a nice guy, however, that did not mean that he was unattractive. In fact, he was so good-looking that he did not seem like a nice person at all. His good looks were a stark contrast to Si Huang's exquisite, perfect, adaptable standard of a beautiful Prince Charming. If one word could describe this man's looks, it would be wicked. Another word to describe him would be sexy. The shape of his face was decent enough, but his beautiful slow-shaped eyes were simply too electrifying. His lips were naturally red and lustrous, and even the slightest of smiles would give off an irresistible air of wickedness. No one would ever believe that he wasn't trying to seduce anyone. One look at his face and one would know that he could not be trusted, that he was only ever good at fooling around and would never settle down. Women would love him but would never trust him. Si Huang knew who he was. This was In Yiyuan, the man director Liu had cast as Feng Kang. He had turned 26 years old this year and had already gained huge popularity. He was usually cast in villainous roles. Interestingly, while others usually garnered hatred when playing the villain, In Yiyuan garnered love for the villainous roles he played, as well as hatred. In fact, people hated and loved him for it. In Yiyuan had noticed Si Huang too. A hint of surprise flashed across his eyes. Then, he smiled and said, "I've seen your video. You may be young, but your abilities go far beyond your years." Si Huang stood up and humbly replied, "I believe you would have performed even better, Mr. In." That was the truth. According to memories of her past life, In Yiyuan had put his 100% into the sovereign journey, to ensure that it would be one of his transformative and climactic pieces of work. His looks were overtly sexy, but this sexiness allowed him to have an even greater impact on women when he displayed devotion or a change of heart in his interactions with them. This very film had allowed In Yiyuan to successfully shed his negative public image and rise from a promiscuous womanizer to the most perfect lover in the hearts of women. As a result, he had taken his career one step further. Si Huang's response elevated In Yiyuan's impression of him even further. Not many newcomers in the industry could do what Si Huang had done. Not only did he have a flawlessly handsome face, but he also carried himself with a pleasing aura. He was clearly flattering him, yet he did not seem fake at all. He could see a kind of straightforward sincerity in his eyes, which easily made a good impression on him. Enough chit-chat. Old Tai spoke up. He was not reserved at all. He was only a little nicer when he turned to Director Liu. "Xiao Liu, let's begin." "Okay," said Director Liu. "Si Huang and Guan Li, stand by." Guan Li had just emerged from the dressing room too, all ready to go. She was wearing long, lemonade-colored robes, and her beautiful hair had been styled exquisitely. Her makeup made her look a few years younger, just like the female lead, Shui Lingxin, who was an 18-year-old girl. Si Huang sat in the wheelchair again and made her way toward the camera along with Guan Li. The mark of an accomplished and capable actor was evident in the details. Guan Li looked at Si Huang in surprise. As an old hand, she knew exactly where to stand to ensure the most flattering camera angles. To her surprise, Si Huang, who was a complete newbie, had also accomplished this flawlessly. "Action!" Director Liu's voice came, snapping Guan Li out of her thoughts. She immediately got into character. However, Si Huang hit her with another big surprise. He seemed to have gotten into character even faster than her. Guan Li wasn't the only one who had noticed this. Director Liu, who had been observing them, had clearly observed this too. Old Tai kept a stoic expression on his face, but his eyes remained focused on Si Huang. The surprise on In Yiyuan's face was evident. He curled his lips into a gentle smile, releasing such an overpowering seductive aura that the female staff, who were tasked with watching him, felt their hearts pounding against their chests. Are all newbies so full of life these days? Or perhaps this really is expected of Prime Entertainment's successor? In Yiyuan wondered. The current scene involving Si Huang and Guan Li was one of the hardest to pull off in the entire saga of the pair. It took place while Feng Kang was injured, and the female lead, Shui Lingxin, had come to seek Mr. Qinji's help. Mr. Qinji had already developed feelings for Shui Lingxin but hadn't fully acknowledged them yet. He only realized this when Shui Lingxin asked for his help to save another man. Any young man, regardless of his ingenious intelligence, would consider feelings uncharted territory. The bloom of his first love had crudely ended before it had even begun. How would Mr. Qinji deal with that? Old Tai's trial was clear. The camera setting was in an ancient loft. A young man clad in pristine white robes sat in his wheelchair. The gentleness of his smooth, handsome features was further enhanced by the dusky rays of light, allowing most of the lingering cool aura around him to dissipate. The young woman in yellow standing before him had delicate, willowy brows, starry eyes, and dainty red lips. She was charmingly beautiful. However, the beautiful girl's face was awash with anxiety. Her brows were furrowed in sorrow, which was an unbearable sight. Guan Li noticed that Si Huang's aura and gaze switched in an instant the moment the director said, "Action." He was no longer that pure, fresh-faced newbie. but the master of this village and the last heir of Qinji Manor, Mr. Qinji. Why the rush? Please have a seat and tell me what's wrong, he said in a gentle, sublime voice, like the soft ripples of a spring on a warm day. He sounded absolutely soothing. Guan Li immediately felt calmer, as if everything would be all right as long as this man was around. This happened to coincide with Shui Lingxin's current state of mind, so her lines were delivered naturally. Something's happened to Feng Kang. The Cao clan has demanded your presence, or else. Si Huang's hand stiffened as he poured the tea. He kept his gaze on Guan Li's slightly lowered eyes. A mild shadow was cast upon his bushy eyebrows. That hint of dejected absent-mindedness had only appeared in the blink of an eye and had clearly gone unnoticed by Guan Li. However, it sent a heavy thump in the hearts of every crew member on set, as sorrow and grief plunged into the depths of their hearts. You came to see me because of him? This might have been a question, but it sounded more like Mr. Qinji was mumbling to himself. Guan Li seemed blissfully ignorant as she answered, "That's right, Ah-chang, only you can fix this. We can't let anything happen to Feng Kang." She grew agitated once again and stood up. She walked closer to Si Huang. Finally, in such close proximity, she noticed the expression on Si Huang's face and the emotions in his eyes. Guan Li froze when she saw this. His slightly pale, handsome face was expressionless, but his eyes were like clear pools, a dark sea of stars that contained countless words that he was unable to describe. He stared at Guan Li intently, his eyes beholding her image and hers alone, gazing upon her as if she were the only person in this entire world. The pair locked eyes in that very instant, and the loft settled into silence. No one had ever looked at Guan Li like that before, with a gaze overflowing with intensity and sincerity, earnestly conveying their love for her without inhibition. She could not deny it. One look was enough for her to understand it. Was that how he really felt about her? Finally, Si Huang broke the silence. "You've already called me Ah-chang." His words felt like a gentle sigh, and his soft tone carried intense tenderness and secretly concealed his helplessness and unrepentance. "How could I refuse you?" There was no resentment or reluctance, no demand for payment. Mr. Qinji spoke as calmly as if nothing in this world could ever move him. However, his clear gaze failed to hide his true feelings. He had suddenly realized how he felt for Shui Lingxin. He had fallen in love, and that was that. He would not hide it and was loath to deny it. Ah-chang. Guan Li drowned in his gaze and felt as if her entire body was enveloped in unconditional tenderness. How could she possibly bear to reject him? How could she bear to turn such immense love away? Guan Li's lips trembled, threatening to blurt out words that were not in the script. Si Huang had already turned his wheelchair and slowly wheeled away, turning his back to her. "You must be tired. Get some rest here. You'll see Feng Kang tomorrow." "Ah-chang," Guan Li cried out. "No, I can't let him leave like that." She ran after his cool figure. The Cao clan worked at sea. Regardless of Aqiang's many capabilities, his crippled legs would put him at great risk at sea, yet he had agreed to this without asking for anything in return. Cut. A voice struck Guan Li's thoughts like a bolt of lightning, stopping her in her tracks. Then, she slowly widened her eyes as if her soul had just returned to her body, and her expression stiffened as well. "Guan Li, did you read the script at all? Who told you to improvise?" Director Lu's reprimand soon followed. Throughout her experiences in the entertainment industry, Guan Li had never endured such a humiliating situation, except when she had received a scolding by a director during her days as a newbie. She instinctively shot Si Huang a look, then turned away and calmly admitted her mistake. "Sorry, I lost focus. I got carried away by Si Huang's performance." Si Huang, who had just stepped away from the wheelchair, looked at Guan Li in surprise. It was rare for a senior to boldly admit to their mistake in front of a newbie, especially considering the meaning behind Guan Li's words. She had spoken about Si Huang's performance with glowing praise and acknowledgement. Director Lu's expression relaxed. "I'm happy that you're aware. You should really reflect on your own performance after getting carried away by a junior actor and losing your grasp on it." "I understand," Guan Li replied. "Shui Lingxin has only ever seen Ah-chang as a younger brother." Old Tai's stately voice suddenly chimed in. His very words immediately drew 100% of the attention of the entire crew. Guan Li, the protagonist in question, blushed before turning very pale. She couldn't bring herself to look old Tai, whose gaze seemed to see through everything, in the eye. Thank you for the reminder, old Tai. I won't make this mistake again. I'll do better next time. Si Huang approached her and smiled. I'm very lucky to be viewed as your younger brother, Sister Guan. His easygoing remark lightened the atmosphere, and a sense of gratitude and complicated emotions flashed across Guan Li's heart. She turned to Si Huang and jokingly replied, if I had a handsome younger brother like you, who knows how many people would be jealous of me. The person before her was still dressed like Mr. Qinji, but he had turned back into the young man she had first met. He did not gaze at her as if she were the only one in his eyes and would not risk everything to help her if she were ever in trouble, nor did he assure her that nothing in the world would harm her as long as he was around. Guan Li felt a tinge of disappointment for some strange reason. It was a heavy feeling that could not be ignored. She knew that this was an effect of getting too carried away by a performance. She had never expected to experience this with a newbie. After all, she had not experienced this with veteran actors either. Si Huang's performance had undoubtedly received old Tai's approval. After old Tai left, Director Liu led Si Huang and Yu Shi to his office. The group sat down and Director Liu began to praise Si Huang generously. Very well done. I guarantee that nobody will ever have the guts to criticize you after this. Si Huang nodded, then sent Yu Shi a signal with one glance. Director Liu had already noticed the astute, prudent-looking young man, and this is. Yu Shi nodded at Director Liu. I'm Si Huang's manager, Yu Shi. You can call me Xiao Yu, Director Liu. Director Liu went into a frenzy when he heard this, then looked at Si Huang for confirmation. Si Huang's expression was calm. Director Liu was at a loss for words. One simply couldn't understand youngsters by using common sense these days. Si Huang gave Yu Shi free rein after that, and he did not disappoint. He successfully negotiated the contract terms with Director Liu. From Si Huang's point of view, the negotiated terms were already considered substantial. She wouldn't have been able to receive anything better if she had negotiated herself. This made Si Huang very happy. As long as Yu Shi was around, her future would be much easier. Before they left, Director Liu once again expressed how surprised he was by the shocking intellectual level of youngsters these days. In time, young men would inevitably replace old men in every profession. Then, he reminded her, remember to manage your schoolwork properly. Old Tai has ordered the filming dates for the Sovereign Journey to be brought forward. You'll have to be on standby for around a month or so, regardless of how many scenes you're in. Make sure that you are always ready. I understand. Si Huang nodded. The makeup artist was still around when Si Huang returned to the dressing room. Your Highness, she immediately cried out when she saw him. I've joined your Order of Knights. Will you take a few more pictures with me? What Order of Knights? Si Huang did not show her surprise on her face. We shouldn't have too many stage photo leaks. You can take as many pictures as you like when the official photos are released, she replied apologetically. The makeup artist understood this very well. After all, she had been working in the industry for quite a while. She reproached herself internally for losing her head over beauty. However, she couldn't help herself when she saw His Highness in all his glory. What if I take a picture and keep it to myself, Your Highness, just so I can drool all over the screen? Please, Your Highness, on account of my sincerity? The corners of Yu Zai's eyes twitched. He was speechless. Hey, big sis. You're not that young anymore. Is it really a good idea for you to put on a cutesy act like that? He wondered. He turned toward Si Huang but noticed that he was still smiling, and his smile was sincere. He looked a little like a warm tree in the summer. Basking in the sun, it was now more difficult than ever to turn away from his already good-looking face. Yu Shi felt that he wasn't putting on an act this time. He genuinely loved this supportive woman and was patiently indulging her. How could any woman possibly resist the look in his eyes? Even he, a man, felt that Si Huang was simply radiant in this state. He was soft and warm like jade, compelling him to come closer. All right, Si Huang agreed with a smile. The blushing makeup artist excitedly took 3 pictures in succession but did not take any more. Your Highness, may I do your makeup next time? She asked Si Huang nervously. Yes, thank you, Si Huang replied. No, it's my pleasure. The makeup artist waved her hand excitedly, then finally put on a serious expression. Si Huang smiled again, stepped into the cubicle to change out of her costume, took a shower, removed her makeup, and left. In the car, Yu Shi looked at Si Huang, who looked very relaxed as she drove the car. Do you really like that woman? He asked quietly. Si Huang was surprised at first, but then realized what he was talking about. She smiled quietly and gently replied, "These women are the ones who love me with utmost sincerity." In her past life, acting had been her only escape from reality, a sacred place that had offered her soul comfort. The fans, who were blissfully unaware of the truth, had given warmth to her cold, dark life. Their enthusiasm had been like fire, following her everywhere as they displayed their affection to the very fullest, reminding her that there were many others who still loved and needed her in this world. Si Huang was selfish, cautious, and unwilling to take the initiative to show her feelings. However, she was always ready to treat her earnest, loving fans with sincerity. Yu Shi was stunned. He stared at Si Huang's gentle gaze and suddenly felt envious of that woman. However, he quickly forced this feeling down. The makeup artist, on the other hand, was furiously scrolling through Weibo again. His Highness is so kind and gentle. Oh, I wish I could turn into a cat, curl into his arms, and beg him to stroke my fur. His Highness said that we can't leak too many pictures until the official film crew photos are released, but after a bit of persuading, he gave in and let me take more pictures. Heart emoji. Heart emoji. I have made up my mind. I'm going to dedicate my phone screen to His Highness from now on. Slurp, slurp, slurp. Run, penguin egg, run. What the heck are you saying? Have you turned from a weird ant to a small cat in one day? What an interesting turn of events. Calm shameplant. Enough, blogger, this is shameful. A cabbage named Jen. Not happy, topless pic, HMPH emoji. Caramel pudding. I know exactly what you mean, blogger. His Highness is really that nice. I've known this for ages. Heart emoji, smiley face. The makeup artist scrolled through Weibo giddily as she stared in admiration at the picture of Si Huang on her phone screen. Suddenly, she heard a loud ding. It was a private message notification from Weibo. She tapped on it to look at it and saw that it was a message from the girl with the ID caramel pudding. Caramel pudding. Hello, dear. Welcome to His Highness's First Order of Knights. Penguin Group number 261,824,808. The makeup artist tapped on the number and joined the group. There weren't a lot of members, but they were all online and they welcomed her very warmly. Caramel pudding. Ding, ding, ding. Welcome, please swear an oath as a new knight of the order. The group immediately went silent. The makeup artist sensed a strangely solemn atmosphere that made her emotions calmer. The slow swell of these emotions made her smile excitedly. It had been a long time since she'd had the urge to pursue someone, which was how she felt when she thought of Si Huang or during her limited interactions with him. Her hands swiftly tapped the keyboard on her phone. Rose with thorns. I hereby swear to be kind to the weak. I swear to fight against violence with valiance. I swear to strive against all wrongdoings. I swear to fight for His Highness. I swear to aid my sisters in arms. I swear to treat my comrades with sincerity. I swear that my love for His Highness will never waver until my last dying breath. Your Highness, we have more golden sparkles. Si Huang's eyelids trembled as she drove the car. The corners of her lips curled into a smile. As Si Huang busied herself with her school leave application and the arrangements for long-distance travel, the internet exploded with news about her once again. The picture of Du Chang, the makeup artist from the Sovereign Journey, with Si Huang on Weibo had been shared across the internet like wildfire in just one short day. The related discussion on Si Huang had grown hotter too. The Sovereign Journey's official crew had also released information on its actors. The male lead, Feng Kang, would be portrayed by an Yiyuan from Gold Star Entertainment. The female lead would be portrayed by the golden girl of this generation, Guan Li. Mr. Qinji, the most widely discussed role, would be portrayed by a newcomer, a previously unknown 16-year-old student, Si Huang. The internet had a wide outreach. Someone soon uncovered some information on Si Huang. He should be highly competent. After all, he was the eldest heir to Prime Entertainment. However, some people had managed to uncover Si Huang's education majors, calligraphy and dance. This created a mighty uproar. He was an empty vase, nothing more than a pretty face who had manipulated his connections and used money to buy the role. These accusations spread like wildfire. Although people aimed these claims directly at Si Huang, no one dared criticize the authority behind the Sovereign Journey. After all, the highest authority behind the film was Old Tai. Si Huang and Yu Shi monitored these reports and accusations and set up a meeting at the Kingford Library. "What's the plan?" Yu Shi asked. Si Huang seemed very calm. "You really shouldn't be asking me. This falls under your job description." Yu Shi took a deep breath. "I understand, but I don't want this to affect you, if you panic." "I won't panic," Si Huang replied. "This is nothing." She looked at Yu Shi and remembered that he was still a far cry from his future self, the man he would be 10 years later. Finally, she reminded him, "The whole point of this is to crush me by using public opinion. Remember what Director Liu said? No one can actually harm me as long as I refuse to step down." "But your reputation," Yu Shi said. Si Huang pursed his lips and smiled. His eyes glowed with confidence. "Let them be. The more they criticize me, the harder they'll fall once I've proven my worth. Besides, I guess you could consider this free publicity for me." Yu Shi was speechless. He stared at Si Huang's smiling face, unsure what to say. The gossip monger's greatest failure probably lies in their ignorance of Si Huang's mental strength. He's so calm, confident, and steadfast that he really doesn't seem like a 16-year-old kid at all, he thought. "How are things going with your university?" Si Huang asked. "My leave application has been approved. All I need to do is come back in time for my end-of-term exam," Yu Shi replied. "Must be nice to be an academic tyrant," Si Huang exclaimed with a hint of envy in his voice. Yu Shi stared at him in surprise. "Is there a problem with your leave application?" Si Huang shook his head sadly. "No, then what's going on?" Yu Shi wondered apprehensively. He would soon discover it and develop a greater understanding of Si Huang. Si Huang gave Zhao Laimei a call before she left to tell her that she did not need to come in for work again until she returned home and that she would pay her as usual. Zhao Laimei had somewhat begun to understand Si Huang as a person, so she agreed without hesitation. She immediately began cooking after getting home, but only Yu Ling arrived on time. Her son was late. "Mom, my big brother's taken a trip to Central City. He's received a last-minute investigation assignment," she explained. "Don't worry, he'll give us a call in his spare time." Zhao Laimei didn't question her daughter and gave Yu Shi a call, reminding him to take good care of himself. She came back to find her daughter with her head buried in her phone screen. Isn't that young Master C?" Yu Ling immediately lifted her head. "Do you know him, Mom?" "Ah, he's my current boss." Zhao Laimei did not notice the change in her daughter's expression and murmured, seemingly to herself, "He's very good-looking and he's not spoiled or difficult to deal with, like other wealthy heirs. He's a good kid, but there seems to be some sort of conflict between him and his parents. He moved out to live on his own and has refused to go home." Yu Ling twisted the corners of her shirt. She pursed her lips in silence as her heart was filled with anguish. At that very moment, she realized that she could no longer deny it. She and Si Huang came from completely different worlds. She had no right to fantasize about being by his side. Si Huang drove Yu Shi all the way to the Sovereign Journeys filming office. When Director Liu found out that Yu Shi couldn't drive, he arranged for an employee to be their driver. That way, Si Huang could get some rest. "I'll get my driver's license as soon as possible," Yu Shi said apologetically as he sat next to her. Si Huang, who had closed her eyes to rest, kept her eyes closed as she answered, "Once we're in Central City, you will use this car to practice whenever you have time. Once you feel ready, you can apply to take your driving test." Yu Shi did not object. After a pause, Yu Shi spoke up again. "Si Huang, there's been a change in the rumors attacking you." Si Huang opened her eyes. "Oh?" Yu Shi handed her the tablet. Si Huang had previously given him that tablet so that he could work more efficiently. The tablet was currently displaying Guan Li's Weibo account. The latest update was a repost of a blog article criticizing Si Huang with her own comments on it. Guan Li v. As someone who's worked with Si Huang, here's my message to the keyboard warriors. Jealousy will only make you uglier. The fans exploded in the comments below the moment she posted the update. Queen Guan's large pillow. Wow, Si Huang is amazing. Even the queen herself is protecting him. Life is better unseen. Good for you, Lily. I may not know the truth, but if Lily says that Si Huang's cool, he's cool. Hey, stop it. My queen, how could you stand up for another man? My heart is broken. Idiot Wing. It's time to take your medicine. Hold it, you've worked with him? Is there some sort of secret between you two? Regardless of how much noise Guan Li's fans made, people soon reshared her post. Then, Si Huang saw a few familiar ids among the latest comments. Caramel pudding. Thank you, Queen Guan. Your good deed shall be rewarded, my queen. The truth will always prevail. The Order of Knights salutes you. Lovely cake. Thank you, Queen Guan. Your good deed shall be rewarded, my queen. His Highness's power should never be questioned. The Order of Knights salutes you. Blueberry juice. Thank you, Queen Guan. Your good deed shall be rewarded, my queen. Behead the trolls. The Order of Knights salutes you. Rose with thorns. Thank you, Queen Guan. Your good deed shall be rewarded, my queen. Behead the trolls. Eat your words, backstage manipulators. The Order of Knights salutes you. Yu Shi observed Si Huang's face and said, these ids seem to pop up every time someone attacks you online. They're also your fiercest defenders. It would seem that they're some sort of special organization with a more systematic form of management. The Order of Knights, Si Huang murmured. Soon, a light flashed across her eyes and her fingers began gliding across the tablet. Yu Shi watched her and asked in surprise, I thought you said that you wanted to watch and see what happens and only strike at the very end. Change of plans. I didn't think that Guan Li would help out, Si Huang replied, and these adorable little knights are charging bravely ahead. She lifted her gaze and smiled at Yu Shi with a valiant look on her face. How could I, their prince, stay hidden? They'd feel sad and helpless. Then, she completed her account registration on Weibo, requested verification from Director Liu and Guan Li, and reshared Guan Li's update. Si Huang v. Thank you, Sister Guan. I'd like to make one thing clear. I was cast in this role by having an official audition. I signed an individual contract, unrelated to Prime Entertainment in any way, so there are no interests at play here. Also, smiley face. Those who've questioned my acting skills, I accept your challenge. Why don't you submit your audition videos for professional evaluation, at Guan Li V? As someone who's worked with Si Huang, here's my message to the keyboard warriors. Jealousy will only make you uglier. She attached a current selfie of herself with slightly tousled dark hair and a handsome face. Rays of light were spilling from the car window and hitting half of her face, which was so fair that one could even see its fine, golden fuzz, as if she were enveloped by a hazy golden halo. She had long, black eyebrows and beautiful, crystal-clear eyes. There was a small smile on her face, and her gaze was focused on each person looking at this picture. Her eyes seemed to speak, conveying her message to the audience. A wise man knows that he knows nothing, while a fool thinks he knows everything. I have nothing to fear, and you have nothing to worry about. Caramel pudding. That was fast, Your Highness. You're finally on Weibo. Yuwu, I'm so excited. I just wanted to say that I believe in you, Your Highness. Lovely cake. You're amazing, Your Highness. I love you, Your Highness. Run, penguin egg, run. As expected of His Highness, a guy in spectacles told me today that we're so lucky. Blueberry juice. Show some respect to His Highness. Hey, trolls, come at us. It was just as Si Huang had predicted. Her appearance had provided her supporters with assurance and strengthened their fighting spirit. Furthermore, she had just registered on Weibo, so her legion of fans grew rapidly. After receiving Guan Li's recognition and resharing her post, this response was expected. These events seemed to have flipped a switch. Yan Yan, the second female protagonist of the Sovereign Journey, who was from Prime Entertainment, reshared Guan Li's update. However, she attached a more cryptic caption. Oh my, cute boys do have a tendency to spark a woman's maternal instincts, don't they? They've only worked together once, yet she's already so protective of him. You're so kind, Sister Guan. Smiley face. The netizens weren't stupid. They responded with all sorts of enigmatic conspiracy theories after seeing Yan Yan's post. Guan Li's fans could not bear the sight of their goddess being mocked covertly and soon started a keyboard war with Yan Yan's fans. Idiot, Si Huang chuckled. Obviously, she was referring to Yan Yan. Despite being a member of Prime Entertainment's talent base, she had made fun of Si Huang, the heir to Prime Entertainment, just to attack Guan Li. This only served to further verify Si Hang's statement that she had nothing to do with Prime Entertainment anymore. Yan Yan and Guan Li don't get along, Yu Shi said. They fought over the female lead role of the Sovereign Journey, but Guan Li won in the end. That explained why Yan Yan had reacted so irrationally. That remark was enough for Si Huang to know that Yu Shi had been doing his homework. In the past, a student like him would never have paid any attention to entertainment gossip. The Weibo fight grew increasingly more intense. To everyone's surprise, and Yu Yuan weighed in as well after Yan Yan jumped in. He reshared Si Huang's update with the caption, "Tisk tisk, has Achang irritated everyone? Do you need my help?" And Yu Yuan's fanbase was mostly composed of women. They immediately burst into a cacophony of discussion when they saw the picture shared on Weibo. "Bishop, where did you find this beautiful man? He's so fresh and juicy, don't ruin him. You're so cute, Bishop, you're sharing this good fortune with us early in the morning. As I recall, Achang is Mr. Qinji's name in the Sovereign Journey. Oh my, are you going to reinvent yourself and turn into Prince Charming instead? Give that title back to His Highness. Please don't cause any more trouble." Check this out, Queen Guan and Cutie Yan are fighting because of Si Huang, but it looks like the bishop likes Si Huang too, link attached. As Yu Yuan's fans joined the fray, Yan Yan naturally found herself on the losing end. However, this was not the end. Soon, Director Liu personally updated his Weibo too, his words slapping the hidden trolls. Si Huang's acting prowess is undisputed. Are you implying that I lack vision? The flames of war diminished greatly after he published his post. Then, the Sovereign Journey's production team delivered another fatal blow, a promotional video. The video was less than 5 minutes long, but it drew the attention of countless people. It consisted of 3 snippets. The first snippet featured Yu Yuan in purple and black official robes with a wide jade ornament. His robes were embroidered with gold thread, and he was wearing an agate-colored crown with feathers. A smile was on his suave, sexy face, making him seem even more handsome and enticing. He was riding a black horse, his hands drawing a long bow as his long hair fluttered against the wind. He gave off an elegant, unconventional vibe as he drew his bow and arrow. He radiated the imposing force of a mighty general while he laughed loudly and heartily. This man seemed extremely reckless. Then, the scene faded away to Guan Li, who was wearing long, light green robes. Her black hair was held in place by a single light green hairpin. Her usually cool and indifferent air was nowhere to be seen. Instead, her eyes were filled with the pure liveliness of a naive girl. She stood on a bamboo raft, gently paddling against the water with a bamboo pole. The emerald waters in the lush forest made her seem even more elegant and refined than ever. Finally, the last snippet featured Si Huang and Guan Li's scene, albeit an even more exquisite version thanks to post-production editing. The audience was drawn to the exceptional young man in the wheelchair from the moment they laid eyes on him. Then, his soft, sublime voice filled their ears like gentle water, enough to melt their hearts, followed by a close-up of Si Huang's eyes. All that was left as they stayed silent was the deep emotion conveyed by his pure, sincere gaze, which burrowed deep into the hearts of the audience. Countless men and women were stunned by this very moment. Some of the most unworldly young women even clutched their hearts, their tender faces burning with a furious blush. The scene ended with a close-up of Si Huang. Guan Li was not featured in the post-production edit, so no one knew that she had broken character or saw the mistake in her eyes. The video instantly silenced the squabbling on the internet. To be more accurate, it silenced the trolls. This was zero acting ability. Then what were the criteria to be a skilled actor? Explain that. Despite being compared to the already immensely popular Yu Yuan and Guan Li, Si Huang, who was featured at the end, was not inferior to them at all. In fact, the most memorable image at the end of the video was not the confident and cocky imperial noble or the fairy of the emerald waters from the secluded mountain. It was the crippled, peerless young man quietly staring at the audience. The trolls slivered back into their dark caves at the end of the internal battle, and Si Huang's newly created Weibo received an influx of fans. Realizing that the situation had been stabilized, Yu Shi turned to Si Huang and gently said, "This production crew is pretty great." Si Huang ignored Wu Bao's excited howls in her mind and smiled. "Do you really think that they did that just to help me?" "Are you saying that they didn't?" Yu Shi asked. Si Huang was all too familiar with the rules of this game. "If you're referring to kindness, Guan Li was genuinely kind. I never thought she would take the initiative to stand up for me. As for Yu Yuan, he was merely putting the icing on the cake. There wasn't a lot of sincerity in his words. His main goal was to gain publicity for his latest film. Director Liu and the rest were after the same thing." They were simply manipulating the flames to gain more publicity for the sovereign journey. Si Huang observed the tense look on Yu Zai's face. Her eyes remained calm and unperturbed the entire time. They probably decided to release the promo video when the internet was in chaos. I'm sure that Director Liu had someone working overtime at the last minute to edit the video. He's more aware of my acting skills than anyone else. He pulled out the video just as the battle reached its peak, not just to catch the trolls by surprise but to attract the attention of countless netizens while increasing the production team's reputation as a family that protects its actors. Then, finally, they gratuitously made me owe them a favor. Si Huang finished her explanation and picked up her vibrating phone. Hello, Director Liu? So, how do you plan on thanking me, kid, for using me to release that impressive publicity video? Si Huang chuckled. Usually, the cost of that amount of publicity would be quite substantial. Director Liu was speechless. Are all kids so sharp these days? What a turn-off. Thank you, Director Liu, Si Huang replied. I'll be counting on you to take care of me from now on. Director Liu ended the call. Meanwhile, Yan Yan's manager had just received a call from Prime Entertainment, which bit his head off. Only then did he realize what Yan Yan had done. Oh my god, honey, I took a short break and you set the whole world on fire. Zhou Jian cried out, feeling too heartbroken to shed tears. I didn't do anything, Yan Yan retorted, looking very impatient. I gave Si Huang a compliment by calling him cute and praised Guan Li for her kindness. These were compliments. Why is everyone overreacting? Zhou Jian ignored her denial. Delete that post from Weibo right now. The higher-ups have spoken. You must have a lot of nerve to attack the boss's eldest son like that. You're a part of the Sovereign Journey's crew. Who'd destroy their own future like that? Actually, Yan Yan was already starting to regret picking a fight with Guan Li. Zhou Jian's reprimand made her feel even guiltier. She tossed her phone at Zhou Jian. I'm not deleting it. You do it. It's not like I was trying to imply anything else. I was just trying to do something nice. You're being unfair. You're the ones who twisted my words with your shady thoughts. Yes, you're right. You just sit right there and be quiet, hun. Rest up and don't forget to treat Director Liu and the rest with the same indignance. Zhou Jian immediately went off to deal with that incriminating post. In order to protect Yan Yan's reputation, he imitated her tone and manner and posted a new Weibo update. Yan Yan v. Have I said something wrong? Enough fighting, guys. I'll delete the post, okay? Pleading face emoji, grieving emoji. Most fans would give their favorite celebrities pet names. For example, Guan Li was known as Queen Guan among her fans. And Yi Yuan was known as the Bishop because of his long-standing reputation of portraying villains and his bad boy looks. As for Yan Yan, her childlike features and large boobs had earned her the pet name Lolita among her fans. Other netizens would simply call her Cutie Yan. The fans began popping in her comments section online at that very moment, using words of comfort one by one. Don't cry, Lolita, I love you. You did nothing wrong, Lolita. It's the world that's far too dark. Humans have such filthy minds. Just ignore those trashy people. Of course, there was no lack of disdainful outsiders among the commenters. Oh my, an ignorant person would think that someone was pushing you around. Check out her post. You're more than 20 years old, yet you're still acting like a naive little kid. Why didn't you delete this sooner? What took you so long? Feeling guilty now, Lolita? You're more like a wicked witch? Stop faking it, beware, or you might fake yourself to death. Zhou Jian furrowed his brows as he observed the situation on Weibo. He turned to Yan Yan and discovered that she had closed her eyes and was taking a nap. He felt exasperated. She was truly a spoiled child. Si Huang arrived at Central City during her nap. Unbeknownst to her, the repercussions of the online keyboard war continued to affect countless people's futures, like a butterfly gently fluttering its wings and setting off countless relevant events. In a large mansion with an idyllic, rustic interior located in the suburbs of H City. An old woman with graying hair was sitting on a comfortable sofa, staring at a high-definition projector before her. Her gaze was sluggish at first, then was gradually filled with excitement. Suddenly, she yelled, "Old man, old poker, old fart. I'm here, what's wrong? Are you feeling all right?" Old Tai was wearing a glove on his hand and was carrying a bowl of food as he rushed out. The old woman was his wife, Yu Shulan. What could possibly be wrong with me? Are you anxious for something to happen to me? She scoffed. Old Tai was at a loss. Fine, fine, fine. I misspoke. Here, the medicated porridge is ready. Drink it slowly. He placed the bowl on the table in front of her. Yu Shulan ignored it and pointed at the projector in front of her. Where did you find this kid, old poker? The resemblance is uncanny. He looks just like Ah-chung. Only then did old Tai realize that the projector was airing an entertainment gossip program that was giving a news report on the internet war and the release of the publicity video. He looked at the excited look on his wife's face and curled his lips. What do you mean? Ah-chung looks far more refined. Who's talking about looks? I was referring to temperament. Temperament, understand? She stood up as she spoke, her face glowing with a red light, like the face of a young girl who had met her favorite celebrity. The Sovereign Journey crew is currently in Central City, right? I want to meet Ah-chung, old poker, immediately. Old Tai felt a gnawing pain at the back of his teeth. You should be resting, he advised her patiently. How could you? Granny Yu shot him a glare and promptly silenced him before he could finish. He's a baby. What's so great about him? He pouted. Granny Yu had a fierce look on her face, but her eyes were filled with glee. I don't care. I've decided that I'm a fan of this kid. Besides, isn't that kid from the Chin family on vacation in Central City? I can meet up with Sister Jen and the others too. On the outside, old Tai might give off a stern image, but he was helpless against his increasingly childish wife. Fine, 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 your wish is my command. Now, drink the medicated porridge, he replied helplessly. Granny Yu was elated. Call the crew and tell them not to tire the child out. He's still a young, growing boy, she nagged as she drank the porridge. Old Tai's heart was filled with envy, but he remembered how much Ah-chung meant to Yu Shulan and sighed. Shulan had always felt that she hadn't done enough for Ah-chung. Now that she had found someone who resembled him, she would do whatever she wished, as long as it made her happy. After all, when one loved someone, one loved anything that was related to them. Director Liu was shocked when he received old Tai's call. He gave the crew members 3 days off, just as he asked, and told them to go sightseeing around Central City, all fees covered. The entire crew roared and cheered when he announced this, and everyone praised Director Liu for his kindness. Even Si Huang was surprised and surmised that something good must have happened to Director Liu's family. Regardless of the reason behind Director Liu's generosity, everyone happily went on their 3-day break and rushed towards Central City's bustling shopping malls. Si Huang politely declined a few invitations from both men and women and waited for everyone to give up and leave. Once she was alone with Yu Shi, she asked, would you like to come with me? Yu Shi replied without hesitation. Okay, change into a casual outfit then. Yu Shi followed her instructions without any questions. By the time he emerged from the room, he found Si Huang, who was staying next door, waiting for him outside. The young man was almost as tall as he was. He was wearing a white casual outfit that made his already fair skin seem even fairer and rosier than ever. He carried himself with a refreshing air, and there was a messenger bag on his back. From the side, his eyes seemed to curve upward, shining clearly and brightly. For one fleeting moment, Yu Shi felt as if he had seen an angel. He blinked and thought, this person is simply radiant wherever he goes. Soon, Yu Shi was too preoccupied to think of anything else. To his complete surprise, Si Huang drove all the way to Central City's famous Mount Early Dawn and started to jog, heading all the way up to the very top of the mountain. He was exhausted and sweating bullets by the time they were halfway to the peak. He stared at Si Huang, who wasn't even panting, in disbelief. What kind of diet were you on when you were a kid? Si Huang burst into laughter at the sight of his wretched state. Forget it, you can stay here and wait for a cable car. Just get off on the 6th stop to last. Yu Shi didn't try to show off. He sadly stayed in place. If it weren't for the constraints of his self-pride, he would have plopped down on the ground, gasping for air. He had no choice but to quietly watch as Si Huang went further and further away. Now that Yu Shi wasn't around, Si Huang found a secluded spot and slipped into the lush, pristine forest. This part of the forest had been left untouched. The further she ventured inside, the sturdier the trees became. Si Huang's eyes flickered with excitement. She took a small breath and leapt. The jump brought her 2 meters off the ground, and she kicked a tree trunk and jumped onto a tree branch with a few dexterous leaps. The instant success of her experiment made Si Huang curve her eyes into arcs. and the corners of her lips curled into a carefree smile. She boldly jumped toward a nearby tree branch, landed on one foot, and then continued leaping ahead. She used all her speed and energy as she felt the wind brushing past her face. A carefree sensation invigorated her entire body. Hee hee, it's great, isn't it, Your Highness? You're almost like a soldier of the Special Forces. Wu Bao quipped smugly, thinking that His Highness would put more effort into gathering gold sparkles upon experiencing the benefits. Then, I could, Your Highness. Wu Bao's fantasy had come to an abrupt end. Its voice became dry and nervous, like a roller coaster that had come to a screeching halt. There's something's up ahead, watch out. Si Huang had sensed it even earlier than Wu Bao. She had a sinking feeling that a pair of eyes had been watching her in the darkness. She couldn't be sure if those eyes belonged to a human, a beast, or something else, as the feeling was too terrifying. Those eyes seemed like an abyss crudely outlining her silhouette, causing the hair underneath her shirt to stand on end. Her skin crawled with the tense vibe of an impending threat, ice cold like the sawed end of a knife yet hot like a maddened beast, culminating into an almost indescribable, biomagnetic field and trapping Si Huang within. She was like a rabbit hunted by a lion, already dogged by a great threat, even though she couldn't see the lion at all. A shapeless, nerve-wracking force was weighing down on her slender shoulders. Run, 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 her mind screamed on instinct along with Wu Bao's urges, run. Si Huang was frozen in place. Wu Bao could sense the danger lurking in the darkness, but not as distinctly as Si Huang did. Her back broke out into a cold sweat, and her expression grew increasingly calmer. She knew that if she made her move now, she would startle whoever was watching her. Turning her back on whatever this was would bring about unexpected consequences. What do I do? Si Huang's heart raced heavily. Every second that passed drove a dull pain into her chest. She blinked and the aura around her silently transformed. The teenager stood on the tree branch in her white casual clothes. She placed one hand against the tree trunk as she paused beneath the speckles of sunlight. Her tall figure carried the ethereal presence of an ink painting. She lifted her jaw just a little bit as if she were taking in the scent of fresh air. She smoothed out the space between her brows, and her eyes were clear and limpid, as if they could go on forever. She casually turned her head to the side and scanned her surroundings. Her rosy lips curved into a pure, wholesome smile. Now, Si Huang deliberately shot a glance toward the eyes in the darkness. Her tense state allowed her a moment to detect the changes in those eyes. Unfortunately, she could not see whom those eyes belonged to. However, she did manage to note a momentary crack in that gaze. She was certain that the enemy was human now. Only a human would crack at the sight of her face. Si Huang took advantage of that momentary crack and sped up to maximum speed. Then, she bolted toward the mountain path. She wasn't going to introduce herself to whoever was watching her despite knowing that it was a human. She had no interest in provoking the owner of those creepy eyes. Whoosh, 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 Si Huang didn't need to turn around. She knew that the large shadow was gaining on her. It was as quick as a monster. Watch out, Your Highness, Wu Bao screamed in her mind. Si Huang instinctively took one step back. Bam! She felt as if she had kicked a metal plate. Si Huang furrowed her brows in agony. Then, she watched as the black shadow engulfed her and felt her hands being bound by an iron chain. Her body was forcefully slammed against the ground. The worst part? The back of her head had landed on a rock. Si Huang groaned. She was getting dizzy. She squinted to look at the hazy shadow looming over her head. The man had a strikingly handsome face that seemed like a product of the uncanny workmanship of the gods. His honey-colored skin was a sexy shade. He had dark, coarse eyebrows, and his eyes shone like lacquer, deep, abstruse, and mysterious. His dark hair had slight, natural waves and was tousled to the degree of arrogance. A few strands of hair fell on his forehead as he lowered his head. He opened his thin lips and spat in a cold, deep voice, trying to get away? Si Huang gaped as if she was being confronted by a formidable enemy. However, the voice that escaped her throat was a whispered cry. Chin Fan. Her head was tilted. This enormous shock, coupled with the pain on the back of her head, sent her plunging into unconsciousness. However, unbeknownst to her, her cry had sent an emotional flutter throughout Chin Fan's entire being. Si Huang's voice was already enchanting to begin with. Her choked cry was not as loud as it sounded in her mind. Instead, it came off as a dreamlike whisper, gentle, trembling, and soft, yet also clear, as if she were simply acting cute. Qin Fan froze. His pupils dilated as he stared at Si Huang in a seemingly ferocious manner. He felt as if a cat's claw had scratched his heart. This strange, numbing sensation was something that Qin Fan had never felt before, nor did he understand it. FCK, there was a private villa on the south side of Mount Early Dawn, on a cliff near the beach. Not many people knew who owned it, and there was no proper road connecting the villa to the world outside. One would probably have to enter the villa by helicopter. Of course, one could enter through the main gate if one was skilled enough to cross the mountain ridges. Today, a huge event had shocked the villa, startling all its occupants. A tall man with grim, handsome features walked through the patio and entered the grand hall, carrying someone in his arms. A group of big, strong men around him, who were wearing military attire, widened their eyes in shock. Qin Xian and his wife, Shang Zhen, hurried downstairs after receiving this news. At first, Shang Zhen's face was filled with shock. Then, her expression became as cold as a block of ice. "Afan, what have you done to this child?" Qin Fan paused. "He's been stunned into unconsciousness, I think." Stunned into unconsciousness, he thinks, what's going on? Qin Xian looked stern. "Is your illness acting up again?" Qin Fan pursed his lips. No, it had a little, at first. However, he was certain that it had not when he had seen the kid. Shang Zhen sighed and walked toward them. "Give the child to me." To her surprise, Qin Fan turned aside and dodged, making Shang Fan enter a mild daze. She glared at her grandson in disbelief. Qin Fan furrowed his brows, moved his lips ever so slightly, then strode vigorously to his room, disappearing from view. "Xian, what is the meaning of this?" Granny Shang Zhen was dumbfounded. Grandpa Qin seemed lost in thought. Afan seemed like he was in a pretty good mood, did you notice? Granny Shang Zhen was shocked. "You're right, he was like a suppressed volcano ready to erupt when he left, but he's a lot calmer now, and he's actually carrying someone in his arms." "We'll discuss this more once Afan comes out." This was Grandpa Qin's plan, and the couple waited outside for nearly half a day. To their surprise, their grandson remained in his room and did not come out at all. The reason? In the room, Qin Fan placed the unconscious Si Huang on the bed, then unfolded his comforter, which had been folded into the shape of a large piece of tofu, and covered her with it. He had initially planned on leaving after doing this, but for some strange reason, he found himself unable to do so. He frowned as he stared at the figure in his bed. "Such soft skin, it's like white jade. I can't see any flaws even with the powers of my eyesight." He could see her long, thick lashes very clearly, as she had her eyes closed. They created a nice contrast against her eyelids, which made her seem even more exquisite and vulnerable than ever. In fact, she looked even younger now than when she had her eyes open. She seemed younger than an adult. Si Huang looked fragile in Qin Fan's eyes. He was simply too delicate. No one could possibly bear to raise a hand against him. His tender, fair complexion was far more exquisite than a woman's. However, there was still one satisfactory aspect about him, the great potential and power hidden underneath this frail body. Qin Fan nodded darkly when he remembered the kid's swift, high leaps in the forest. A smooth, soft sensation suddenly snapped him out of his stupor. He narrowed his eyes again and stared at his long, coarse fingers, which had automatically gravitated toward Si Huang's cheek. He poked his cheek once, then did it once more. His heart followed the rhythm of his fingers like a scratching cat, scratching once, then once more. Qin Fan gradually felt a little sleepy amidst the mess of these strange new feelings. This was certainly rare. For anyone suffering from insomnia for more than 10 days, a sudden bout of sleepiness was a blessing. Qin Fan did not fight this increasingly seductive lull to sleep. Seized by this supernatural coincidence, he lay on the bed and shut his eyes. He felt a strange sense of attraction in his blurry state, as if he had discovered an oasis in the middle of a desert. This feeling made him lose all control and filled him with the urge to rush toward the oasis and claim it as his own. He wanted to submerge himself in the oasis, for the refreshing feeling of it would fill him with endless ecstasy. In stark contrast, Si Huang was not sleeping well. She was having a dream filled with memories of her past life. In her past life, Si Huang had just graduated from high school at the age of 18. She was beginning to look forward to her future as a college student with great joy when Si Jian suddenly ordered her to marry a man she had never met before. based on Si Jian's actions, she knew that her future spouse was definitely an alarmingly powerful person that would provide him with great benefits. At the time, Si Jian had taken her on a private helicopter to Divine Qilin Summit, an antique mansion in the middle of the forest. Si Huang was amazed by the sight of it until a loud scream interrupted her thoughts and a scene she would never forget for the rest of her life occurred. She felt bile surge in her throat at that very moment. The topless man had jet black, messy, slightly wavy hair that covered his eyes. However, even so, she could still feel the cold, cruel gaze in his eyes. His face was lined with sadistic, twisted features. She could even see veins popping out on his neck. His bright white teeth biting viciously was a sight that would always terrify Si Huang. His tall, perfect body seemed like a flawless marble carving due to his exquisite skin, yet he looked like a maddened wild animal at the same time, causing the hair on her entire body to stand on end as she trembled. Stop, brother Fan. Calm down, please calm down. The other people were frantically trying to stop the topless man, their faces filled with awe and anxiety. Suddenly, a stocky, middle-aged man touched the man's arm, and everyone's ears were filled with tearing, cracking sounds, followed by the middle-aged man's blood-curdling shrieks. The middle-aged man's arm had been bloodily torn off his body. No one had seen how the topless man had done it. Si Huang felt her eyes redden. Her nostrils were filled with the smell of blood. She was so shocked that she simply could not move. She stood in the same spot as if her body had turned into stone, her stomach churned. Then, the shirtless man seemed to sense her eyes on him and turned to her. Si Huang felt as if she could see his ferocious, bloodshot eyes through his jet black hair and felt a throbbing pain in her chest. She wasn't sure if this was a mistake or her imagination. The man's expression seemed to switch hesitantly. His entire body released a strange, oppressive, wild aura. Then, he extended his hand towards Si Huang. His large hand was drenched in blood. It was the very hand he had used to tear off another man's arm. Si Huang's throat released a whimpering noise that sounded like a broken windbox. Her body instinctively urged her to back away. Then, she turned around, no longer able to keep the churning in her stomach under control. She puked, releasing a mouthful of acid. The nervous throbbing feeling in her heart and the smell of blood that filled her nostrils made it extremely difficult for her to breathe. The large shadow inched close to her silently, causing her chest to tighten again. She nearly lost her breath. She stared at the man, who was half a meter away from her, with eyes filled with panic and terror, like an injured cub. Don't come any closer, she let out a hoarse cry. To her surprise, the man stopped advancing toward her. He remained silent for 2 seconds, then turned around and left. She didn't know what happened next. The Qin family refused to see them and sent someone to escort them home instead. Everything happened really quickly. It felt like a dream to 18-year-old Si Huang, who had spent her days at school or at home before. When she found out that the person Si Jian had wanted her to marry was that terrifying man, Qin Fan, Si Huang rebelled against Si Jian for the very first time. Si Huang's still rattled heart plunged into a wave of disappointment that chilled her to the bone when she saw the look on Si Jian's face. Her eyes were finally opened, and something inside her shattered. Father, you were obviously frightened too. So frightened that your knees gave way and you landed on the ground. You knew how terrifying that man was. You were afraid too. How could you have pushed me in there? The most surprising part was that Si Jian had not sent her to college but had made her sign a contract with Prime Entertainment and debuted her as a celebrity from the very beginning. Soon, she'd faced the first bleak moment of her life. Si Jian had sent her to a business partner. She still remembered the first words that the seemingly gentle and decent-looking man had said. "This is the one that Master Qin liked? Not bad at all." Master Qin liked me. Si Huang was certain that that terrifying man would not have said this to anyone, which meant that her father, Si Jian, had planned this himself. Si Huang remembered every detail of her dream when she woke up. The dream had begun with the many tribulations she had endured in her life. Then, for some strange reason, the scene had changed from a tragic show to a ridiculously cute fantasy clip. She had dreamt that she had turned into an egg and had been stolen by a huge beast. The beast had placed her in its nest and then hugged her very tightly and chanted, "Hatch, hatch, come on out, little butterball. I'll raise you, fatten you, then eat you, eat you, eat you." She, the egg, had been hugged so tightly that she'd begun to feel very hot. It was so hot that she wanted to wiggle away, afraid that she would be fattened up and eaten if she stayed. Finally, the heat had woken her up. She opened her eyes but met only darkness. For a moment, she felt uncertain, until Wu Bao cleared its throat in her mind and said, "Ahem, Your Highness, please look up." Si Huang raised her head, her eyes then narrowed. Now, she understood, her face was buried in someone's chest. She lifted her head and peeked out of the comforter. Her entire face was awash with complicated emotions when she saw his face. He was sleeping very soundly. She could tell simply based on his breathing. Si Huang could not believe this. Shouldn't someone like him be a light sleeper? So alert that the slightest brush of the wind or rustle of the grass would startle him? Si Huang's eyes gradually sank as her sense of existence slowly slipped away while she quietly observed Qin Fan. Once she lost this sense of amazement and her prejudice, she noticed all sorts of details about this man that she had never noticed before. For example, this man seemed younger than the madman in her memories and was surprisingly handsome. His straight eyebrows were slanted toward his temples, and the hair above his temples was sharply outlined, as if it had been cut by a knife. The space between his brows seemed relaxed yet still gave off a sturdy air, although not as grand and majestic as when he had his eyes open, so much so that one felt too frightened to stare at him for too long. He had a high, straight nose and actually had a natural Cupid's bow, the kind that seemed to smile even when he wasn't smiling. Si Huang was surprised. Not many people had noticed this, she thought, and it was likely that this man didn't like smiling. This somehow ruined this attractive pair of lips. Si Huang had never thought that she'd end up running into Qin Fan so soon or in this manner. She recalled her performance on Mount Early Dawn, then looked at Qin Fan, who was fast asleep but did not feel afraid. She was no longer the same gullible young girl who had just graduated and entered adulthood. Actually, after everything that she had experienced in her past life, she no longer feared Qin Fan. Especially after hearing all sorts of whispers about him from upper-class social figures, she really wasn't afraid of him anymore. In fact, she felt a sense of reverence. This man was a true soldier. No matter how fierce or stubborn he was much better than those fame-mongering, sanctimonious people who'd kill through smooth strategy. In contrast to the people who resorted to filthy tactics, her first meeting with him no longer scared Si Huang. Instead, it had become a part of her memories. Unfortunately, she had only met him that one time in the past. Their paths had never crossed again after that unforgettable event. He had lost his life a year before her death. Apparently, he had been killed on a mission overseas. Not even she had been able to uncover any further details. Si Huang narrowed her eyes. She hated a lot of people, but she did not hate Qin Fan, even though he had spurred the beginning of her tragic end. She used to be angry with him when she was much younger, but she had soon come to a realization later on. Everything had happened as a result of her own choices. She was the one who had failed to see things from a clearer perspective. She should be hating herself for her initial naivety and helplessness instead. However, her lack of hatred did not mean that she would allow things to go with the flow. Initially, she had expected to meet Qin Fan more than a year later. Based on her plans, she would already have the ability to protect herself by then and would not be at Si Jian's mercy again. This would also prevent her imperfect introduction to Qin Fan. Unfortunately, her plans had not aligned themselves with her changes. Your Highness, Wu Bao interrupted Si Huang's thoughts. Once she realized that she was still lying in Qin Fan's arms and they were on the same bed, Si Huang knew that getting away from him should be her priority. She didn't have time for further analysis. She shifted a little, and the arms around her tightened their grip. Before she knew it, Si Huang was pressed even closer into his warm, broad chest. His warm body temperature and his powerful, beating heart were filled with an overpowering aura of masculinity. Si Huang's heart tensed up as well. She felt a jolt of electricity surging through her body. Although it wasn't strong, it could not be dismissed. It was strange and exciting. Your Highness, are you awake? I need to tell you something. It's important. Wu Bao's tone was both excited and cautious. Hold on, Si Huang answered it quietly in her mind. It was not that she didn't want to listen to Wu Bao, but she needed to face the man before her, whose abstruse eyes were now suddenly wide open. Qin Fan was awake. He looked like a lion waking up from deep sleep. He might be inhibited by grogginess, but he was gradually recovering his majestic, beastly aura. He relaxed his shoulders, Just as Si Huang thought that he was going to release her, he held her tightly in his arms once again, holding her as if she were a large bolster. He coarsely nuzzled his head downward, brushing his stubble against Si Huang's tender cheek. It felt ticklish yet scratchy. However, that was not the point. What was Qin Fan doing? She was reminded of a large dog. What was up with this sense of déjà vu? What are you doing? Si Huang asked after entering a short daze. Then, she pushed Qin Fan's face away with both hands. The rejected Qin Fan frowned. His expression turned cold in a second. His groggy gaze gradually sharpened. The beautiful woman's face was imprinted in his dark eyes in no time. He raised his eyebrows, and his pupils dilated, looking full of vigor. Qin Fan narrowed his eyes and pulled the comforter away. Are you feeling all right? He asked Si Huang. So, we're just going to ignore whatever happened in this bed? So soon? Si Huang did not pursue the matter and got out of bed too. Her body's recovery rate had probably received an upgrade too. The back of her head no longer hurt. I'm fine, she replied indifferently. Si Huang waited for him to continue his sentence, but Qin Fan began folding the comforter into the shape of a large piece of tofu with a calm look on his face. Si Huang felt surprisingly calm as she watched him fold the comforter into the perfect shape of a large piece of tofu with skilled, adept hands. She even stole a few casual glances at him. He seemed like a completely normal person from every angle. Suddenly, Qin Fan turned around, locking eyes with Si Huang. Si Huang remained calm and did not avoid his gaze. I suppose it's expected of you to dress my wounds. After all, I was your victim, so I guess I shouldn't have to thank you for this. If you'll excuse me, I must take my leave. Qin Fan didn't answer. Si Huang took his silence as consent and turned around to open the door. Just as her hand touched the doorknob, she felt a gust of wind come from behind her. Si Huang instinctively turned around to retaliate. Their arms molded into one with a bang. His metal-like grip made Si Huang frown. She lifted her gaze and shot Qin Fan a cold glare. What are you doing? Continue. Qin Fan stared at her. I take back everything I said. This man isn't normal. His insanity is absolutely beyond comprehension. Si Huang remained silent for 2 seconds. This man had witnessed her abilities in the forest anyway, so there was no need to hide. She felt mildly infuriated as she attempted to grab the doorknob again. As expected, Qin Fan caught her again. This time, she didn't ask why. She immediately fought back. The situation escalated to a sparring match. Soon, Si Huang realized that Qin Fan was simply defending himself and was not attacking. Otherwise, she would not have been able to withstand him for so long given the level of his abilities. Finally, Si Huang stumbled and landed with her back on the ground. Qin Fan knelt on top of her with one leg on either side of her waist and one knee against her lower abdomen, successfully restraining both her wrists with one hand. Tisk tisk, check out this position, Wu Bao scoffed in Si Huang's mind. Are you on a grass-only diet? Why are you so skinny? Qin Fan asked with a deadpan look on his face. Si Huang was speechless. Just because you have a deadpan look on your face, it doesn't mean I can't hear the smug tone in your voice. Just what do you want? She asked calmly. Qin Fan stroked Si Huang's face with his free hand. He was taken aback by the smooth, tender sensation of her skin. It was like stroking an egg. Would it crack if I pinched it? Seized by a novelty-seeking urge, Qin Fan applied pressure. The result? Her face didn't crack, it turned red instead. Si Huang's eyes were gleaming with flames, especially when Qin Fan's hand gravitated toward her chin and neck. You're not a grown-up, are you? You still don't have your Adam's apple. If he went any further, he'd be touching her breast. Was that his plan? Stop, Si Huang snapped icily. This sudden outburst was enough to stop Qin Fan in his tracks. He stared at her, unsure if her face was red from anger or because he had pinched her. He frowned and asked, Are you a woman? No, Si Huang denied it through gritted teeth. Then what's the big deal? He was mocking her. He was definitely mocking her. Si Huang laughed in spite of her rage. She shot Qin Fan's eyes a meaningful look and snorted, Men should abstain from careless touching. Anyone who touches must take responsibility. Unless you want me to FCK you. I wouldn't mind. Tisk. Qin Fan's face broke into a rare smile, as if he had heard the world's biggest joke. You, no way. There was no hint of deliberate mockery in his tone, but his matter-of-fact tone served as a greater blow to her confidence. Si Huang didn't retaliate. The situation before her proved that she was no match for Qin Fan. "What's your name?" Qin Fan asked. Si Huang, she had nothing to hide. Qin Fan patted her on the head and looked at her pretty, innocent little face, wondering if a single slap would ruin it. He lightened the amount of strength he used while patting her, then ended up flicking her on the head instead. Si Huang was perplexed, but Qin Fan seemed very calm. "Be honest." "My name is Si Huang. How is this name fake in any way?" Qin Fan really couldn't detect any holes in her lie, probably because Si Huang seemed so calm and serious. "I don't remember anyone from the Si family," he replied dubiously, focusing his gaze on the person beneath him. "How did you know my name? You're not from any of those families." "I heard a friend mention you and saw your picture," Si Huang answered calmly. "Who's your friend?" Qin Fan asked. Si Huang shut her mouth, unable to answer. The look in Qin Fan's eyes seemed to exude an intense sense of coercion. A sudden knock on the door was heard just in time, breaking the silence between the pair. "Afan, come out," said Granny Zhang's voice, coming from outside. Si Huang glanced at Qin Fan, who finally released her. He paused thoughtfully and said, "Stay here and wait for me." Si Huang stood up quietly and did not answer Qin Fan. She turned around and sat in a chair in a corner. Qin Fan looked at her again, then opened the door and walked out. Granny Shang couldn't see Si Huang from that angle. She attempted to look, but Qin Fan stood in her way. "What is it?" he asked, closing the door. "Where's the child? What were you doing in there?" "Nothing, your Granny Yu has arrived. Come and say hello." Si Huang listened to the vague voices outside. She waited until it was silent and then mumbled, "Stay here and wait for you?" "Yeah, right." She got up and headed to the window. Then, Wu Bao cried out in her mind, "Your Highness, you must reconsider. Listen to me, that man is amazing. I wouldn't have noticed it if he hadn't plastered himself against you. This man's physique is made from pure yang energy, and his body was born with supreme yang. He's perfect for someone with supreme yin like you. He can supply all the benefits that you're currently receiving from others all on his own and provide you with yang energy, which will allow you to have a much healthier survival. Your Highness, what I'm trying to say is that, you should use your charm and persuade him to side with us. This should be fairly easy for you. After all, his extreme yang energy will easily drive him to agony and eventually to insanity and death. Only you, Your Highness, and your supreme yin can neutralize his overflowing yang energy and alleviate his suffering." Due to the importance of the situation, Wu Bao explained everything in a single breath, afraid that Si Huang would not listen to it. This revelation shocked Si Huang greatly. Her thoughts lingered on the words. After all, his extreme yang energy will easily drive him to agony and eventually to insanity and death. Insanity, then death? Insanity? Is he a madman? Si Huang realized that she had caught onto a secret from her past life. She stood by the window and looked down. The scene before her was a clear indicator. Escaping through the window would be impossible. Now, she understood why Qin Fan had casually left her alone. Your Highness, have you been listening to me? This is a stroke of great fortune. He's probably the only person in the world who has these traits." Wu Bao had initially thought that Si Huang would be as excited as it was after hearing this, but her calm reaction made it even more anxious. "I understand," Si Huang replied. "We'll talk about this later." She wasn't so desperate that she would die without this man. Why should she take the initiative to seduce Qin Fan? It all felt kind of weird to her. She looked around the room and found her bag. Its contents were intact, and there were no signs of a search. However, her phone had run out of battery. She slung the bag over her shoulder and thought of Yu Shi, wondering if he was all right. An irresponsible thought crossed her mind. It's not my fault for standing him up. A certain someone who had been waiting at the 6th stop of Mount Early Dawn all day, frantically calling her over and over again, would probably have burst into tears and passed out on the toilet if he had been able to hear Si Huang's thoughts. Since climbing out of the window was impossible, Si Huang chose to leave through the main door. She walked out of Qin Fan's room and headed toward the living room straight away. Si Huang turned to the side and stood behind a corner. She saw a group of people seated on the wooden chairs in the living room. She recognized 2 members of the group aside from Qin Fan, Old Tai and his wife, Yu Shulan. If her estimation powers were correct, the other 2 members of the group were Qin Fan's grandfather and grandmother. According to her memories, Qin Fan's parents had passed away when he was a kid, and he had grown up in his grandfather's home. She had not met the two elders in her past life. Our little Qilin seems to be in a good mood, Granny Yu remarked. He's actually managed to sleep through the entire day, Granny Shang replied. She glanced at the silent Qin Fan and happened to notice Si Huang, who was standing around the corner. She paused in surprise and got to her feet. You must be the child Afan brought back. Come, sit. Are you feeling better? Her reaction drew everyone's attention. Qin Fan strode toward Si Huang, reaching her with just a few steps due to the short distance between them. His arm naturally landed on Si Huang's shoulder before he marched him to the center of the living room. Si Huang felt a weight on her shoulders and stared at Qin Fan expressionlessly. Are we that close? Have we reached the stage when we can place our arms around each other? Grandpa Qin, Old Tai, and the rest all had strange looks on their faces. They knew how picky Qin Fan could be when it came to people. Granny Yu instinctively cast Si Huang a measuring gaze. She hadn't gotten a clear view of him, as he had been too far away before. Now, he was sitting right across the room from her. Granny Yu leapt to her feet and made her way to Si Huang. Achang, it's you, Achang. Oh my god, this is fate. I came all the way here just to see you. Grandpa Qin and Granny Shang were rendered speechless. I thought she was here to visit us, what changed? Si Huang was shocked too. Her gaze softened as soon as it landed on Granny Yu and seemed even clearer and purer than ever. You are? I'm your fan, Granny Yu answered, looking like a star-crossed, celebrity-chasing teenage girl. Granny Shang knew her childhood best friend very well. She knew that she was acting up again. Peeved. Her answer didn't surprise Si Huang, who chuckled instead. She blinked at the excited Granny Yu. Thank you for your admiration. Would you like an autograph? Oh my, Granny Yu's eyes glowed with fondness. The actor cast as Achang wasn't just likable in character. He was just as likable in real life. He was so polite and well-mannered. She gleefully rolled up the hem of her shirt. Yes, sign right here. Old Tai couldn't stomach any more of this. He dragged his wife back to his side. What are you doing here? He asked Si Huang stiffly. I ran into a wild animal on the mountain, fell, and bumped my head as I was running away, Si Huang calmly replied. There are wild animals on the mountain? Granny Yu gasped. Are you all right? She then turned to Granny Shang and said, You've been negligent. Granny Shang was speechless. The aforementioned wild animal, Qin Fan, shot Si Huang a harsh, aggressive glare. Si Huang's expression remained unchanged. I'm fine. Luckily, Qin Fan saved me, she replied with a smile. Wild beasts don't understand the human language, Fan, the wild beast, interjected. Si Huang choked. Old Tai and the rest shared a subtle look. She silently cursed Qin Fan for his lack of decorum. Her smile waned. She didn't owe Qin Fan anything anyway, as he hadn't actually saved her. There was no need to keep a low profile and attempt to explain. I have work to do. Please excuse me. Granny Zhang's eyes flashed. She was about to speak up, but Qin Fan beat her to it. What kind of work do you do? I'm an actor, Si Huang replied. Quit, Qin Fan said. Join my team. He noticed a slight chill in his beautiful eyes. His heart sank for some strange reason. He quickly added an explanation. You have potential. You'd have a better future in the army than in the entertainment industry. I guarantee that. No need. Si Huang coolly cut him off. Her face showed no signs of anger or embarrassment, but her slightly raised brows and the lifted corners of her eyes made it clear that she would not allow any form of insult. She was not intimidated by Qin Fan, so she confronted him directly. You don't control my future. Qin Fan frowned. His tone may seem careless, but he sounds angry. He's more infuriated than he was during our fight in the bedroom. Why? Si Huang refused to let him continue the conversation. She turned around and bowed before the four elders, then left without hesitation. Granny Shang came back to her senses after a pause. Wait, you can't leave by car, she called out. However, Si Huang had completely vanished. Soon, a soldier entered with a report. That man seems highly skilled. I'm sure he'll be able to leave the mountain with ease. Si Huang returned to the hotel. She was expecting a good scolding from Director Liu, but he was nowhere to be seen. She finally found Yu Shi when she was back in her room. She realized that he had covered for her after listening to him complain. I would have informed Director Liu if you still hadn't come back by the end of the day. Yu Shi stared at Si Huang, looking extremely haggard. Where have you been? As Si Huang's manager and victim, Yu Shi felt that he deserved an explanation. Si Huang sighed. I ran into a wild animal on the mountain. She used the same excuse. Yu Shi didn't have a strong psyche. Si Huang chuckled upon seeing the wide-eyed look on his face. I was dragged into the wild animal's den and I stayed there overnight, but I'm back now. Yu Shi was speechless. He wasn't sure if he should believe Si Huang or not. Regardless, Si Huang added, thank you for covering for me, you are certainly handy. Yu Shi clicked his tongue, burying the glee he felt after being acknowledged by her. He got to his feet. I'm glad you're all right. I'm going back to catch up on some sleep. Go on, Si Huang said before watching him leave. Si Huang took a shower as soon as the door was closed. She changed into a set of clean, fresh clothes, then lazily plopped herself on the sofa in the heated room. She turned on the laptop in front of her, paused thoughtfully, and logged into Weibo. Si Huang v. had a fight with a wild animal, didn't win, sigh. The Weibo update received replies as soon as it was posted. Your Highness, are you all right? Where is this wild animal? I'll kill it. Sharpening my knife for the wild beast. Kill, kill, kill. Knife emoji, angry face emoji. Don't be sad, Your Highness. Allow me to give you a massage. I give the best massages. The replies increased as time passed. Some people were consoling her, and some were angrily cursing the wild beast. Others were sharp-witted enough to ask if this wild animal really was a wild animal. Si Huang carefully read every single reply, her spirits lifted by the wave of interesting messages. She sniggered a few times. Her bad mood, which had been previously caused by Qin Fan, gradually disappeared as well. She felt completely refreshed. In her past life, this was one of the ways she had used to cheer herself up. Every time she'd felt like giving up or was pushed close to her breaking point from pressure, she would post an update on Weibo. Then, she would feel the love and comfort of her fans via the internet. There was always someone capable of saying something ridiculous enough to comfort her or make her laugh on the internet. Feeling better, Si Huang closed her Weibo page and went to the stock market. It was time to get to work. Meanwhile, in the Qin mansion, every individual in that group had been left feeling a different mixture of emotions. Old Tai and Granny Yu had lunch at the Qin mansion and left, leaving Qin Fan alone with his grandparents. Granny Shang sent everyone away and then turned to Qin Fan. What happened with that child? What on earth did you do to him last night? She asked. He calms me, Qin Fan replied. Grandpa Qin, who had just picked up his teacup, hastily placed it back on the table, spilling some tea on the back of his hand. However, he seemed completely oblivious to this. He stared at Qin Fan. Are you sure? Qin Fan nodded. That was the best sleep I've had in 10 years. Granny Shang and Grandpa Qin looked at each other. They believed Qin Fan. He really did seem to be in a better mood. Granny Shang sighed resentfully. Then you should have made him stay. This was important. The look on Si Huang's face when he'd left flashed past Qin Fan's mind. He sat in silence for 2 seconds, then got up. He's not a pet. Besides, I asked him to stay and he refused. I angered him too. Granny Shang was about to stop Qin Fan from leaving, as she wanted to talk to him a little longer, but Grandpa Qin stopped her. You still don't understand him? He asked in a low voice. He won't force anyone who isn't one of his soldiers into something they're not willing to do. The next day, Si Huang had lost all interest in jogging on Mount Early Dawn, all thanks to her encounter with Qin Fan. She hung around in the hotel gym, then went back to her room. Soon, there was a knock on the door. Yu Shi had arrived. I was exhausted yesterday, so I forgot to ask. Why'd you ask me to wait for you at the 6th stop? Yu Shi asked as he sat in front of Si Huang. Si Huang pulled her bag, which she had set aside yesterday, over. Then, she took out a few books. Yu Shi was taken aback. There's a cafe with a nice ambiance at the 6th stop, she said. You're just in time. Help me with my homework. Yu Shi was speechless. Si Huang got up and sat next to him. You're aware of my majors. My marks aren't good enough for a prestigious college. She had previously applied to Star Youth Academy of Arts in her past life, but her plans were different this time. However, her current grades were not up to par. Yu Shi kept staring at her in a daze. Any questions? Si Huang asked. And no, none at all, Yu Shi replied. You just seem so down to earth all of a sudden. To him, Si Huang had always seemed like someone who could do anything, which made him feel really ashamed. Now, he'd admitted to having bad grades. Yu Shi quietly gazed at his fair, exquisite side profile as he tutored him, peering at the serious, studious look on his face. He couldn't seem to see him as someone inferior. Instead, Si Huang felt even more dazzling to him, even more untouchable than ever. He was already so perfect in the first place, yet he persisted and continued to improve. He wasn't arrogant or conceited in the least. I can't even be jealous of him, even if I wanted to be, Yu Shi sighed internally. The 3-day vacation passed in the blink of an eye, and the crew quickly began to get to work. Si Huang was used to waking up early. Not even Director Liu had arrived on set when she arrived. The lighting technician, the art director, and the people in the same team were the only ones around. Aside from a few warm greetings from the female staff members, everyone else simply glanced at Si Huang when she arrived. She could hear faint whispers among a few of the male staff too. Si Huang did not seem to hear them. This was not an issue for her, as it was completely normal in the entertainment industry. It was extremely difficult to receive a warm welcome before achieving stardom. Besides, people of the same sex tended to repel each other. Your Highness, Si Huang turned around and saw a familiar-looking woman. Good morning, she smiled as she walked toward her. Du Chang was grinning so broadly that her eyes were now squinting into 2 single lines. You're early today, Your Highness. Do you work out in the morning? She asked, noticing Si Huang's workout attire. I jog. Si Huang followed her as she led her to the dressing room. Her melodious voice was enough to lift one's spirits. Du Chang quietly made a mental note. So that's why you're so full of energy. She couldn't bring herself to praise his good physique. Besides, she couldn't see a thing under Si Huang's baggy sportswear. However, his stature and overall look were attractive enough. Si Huang smiled. I'll have to thank you for your efforts again, she said. Du Chang hurriedly waved her hand and told him that it was no problem. Deep down, a tiny part of her was wailing like a madwoman. You're such a gentleman, Your Highness. You're so kind. Oh, how I wish I were 10 years younger. Du Chang made small talk with Si Huang while she put on his makeup. She continued using his pet name the entire time, and Si Huang responded warmly. Suddenly, a delicate, girlish voice interrupted their conversation. Your Highness, you've certainly acknowledged that with great ease, young Master Si. Anyone ignorant would think that he was the male lead, Brother Yiyuan, don't you agree? Du Chang paused. Her eyes flashed with indignance, but Si Huang smiled at her. She swallowed the retort that had been hanging on her lips. Deep down, a small part of her clenched her fists. I promised my comrades that I'd take care of His Highness. I mustn't cause him any trouble. Then, Si Huang turned to face the group at the door. The first thing she noticed was the woman's choppy waves, then her delicate, pretty face. She was probably around 158 centimeters tall. She was wearing a white woolen sweater with pink embroidery, a pleated skirt, white tights, and black Mary Jane wedges. She looked adorable and fresh-faced, just like a doll. She turned her head to the side and looked at An Yiyuan. The latter smiled at her and did not respond. He walked into the dressing room. You're here early, he told Si Huang. A hint of embarrassment flashed across Yan Yan's face. Si Huang rose to his feet and nodded at An Yiyuan. It's only right for a newcomer like me to arrive early. It would be inappropriate of me to arrive later than my seniors. Yan Yan joined them. Don't say that, young Master Si. I'm no senior. Given your abilities, I might be addressing you as my senior in no time. Si Huang cast her a sidelong glance. His beautiful eyes curved as he gave her a flawless smile. That's a good point. This was Yan Yan's first time meeting Si Huang in the flesh. Upon seeing his smile from such close proximity, she realized that his fine eyeliner was nothing compared to his bright, striking pupils. The undercurrent beneath his dark eyes was powerful enough to lure her and drown her within it. She would have reconsidered her plans to crush Si Huang if she hadn't remembered her phone conversation with Si Hua just in time. What did you say? She came back to her senses and finally noticed the cheeky words uttered by his clear, mellow voice. An Yiyuan burst into laughter. It's good to be ambitious and confident, it's good motivation. The tension in the room was diffused just like that. Yan Yan's expression turned cold. Her vision became foggy. She wondered what the paparazzi would say if they caught a picture of this. Director Liu's here. Keep talking if you want a good scolding. Guan Li icily chimed in as she walked past the door. She had her own personal dressing room. And Yi Yuan walked out with a grin on his face. The misty-eyed Yan Yan immediately turned hostile. Can you really expect everything to go smoothly after stealing your brother's role? HMPH, she hissed. Du Chang continued putting on Si Huang's makeup once everyone left. Why, she grumbled indignantly. That little SLT, however, Si Huang lifted her hand and cut her off before she could continue. Du Chang panicked. She cursed herself for losing her composure. Those words came from me. They had nothing to do with you, Your Highness, she said. I was just worried. Her voice trailed off. This time, it was because of Si Huang's soothing smile. She would lose all her willpower every time she saw his pure, gentle smile. I'm not worried about you causing me trouble. I just don't want you to take offense for my sake and end up getting mocked. You'll end up getting in trouble. Si Huang patiently explained. Whatever she's doing isn't enough to bother me. She got up from her chair and smiled at Du Chang as she walked to the changing room. Just sit tight and watch. Du Chang finally came back to her senses after a pause of 5 to 6 seconds. Her cheeks flushed bright red. D***mn it, it's been years since I've actually blushed. She needed to express her excitement, as holding it all in might lead to sickness. She pulled out her phone, logged into the Penguin group, and began typing. Rose with thorns. Ah, sisters. His Highness is so gentle. I'm this close to fainting from happiness. Becoming a makeup artist is the best decision I ever made. Did you know? His Highness goes jogging every morning. It's no wonder he has such an amazing figure. Scumbag Yan was trying to pick a fight, summary omitted. You should have seen the look on that little scumbag's face, and then. A few minutes later, Si Huang emerged in lunar white ancient robes and found Miss Du hastily putting her phone away, looking very red in the face. She rushed to help him with his wig, her eyes sparkling brightly as she hummed a tune. Si Huang chuckled at the sight of her diligent yet blissful state. She could almost see a tail growing out of Du Chang's back and reaching up to the sky. Si Huang was the first to leave the dressing rooms. The setup for the background was now ready. Director Liu was at his post. He noticed Si Huang but showed no emotion on his face. Nonetheless, his eyes expressed a sense of satisfaction. And Yi Yuan, Guan Li, and Yan Yan all appeared in succession. The cast of The Sovereign Journey was certainly formidable. In her previous life, every main character had made the drama extremely popular. One could tell how exquisite they were simply based on their costumes and accessories. This production was on par with big blockbuster movies. Even their wigs were made from real hair. As a result, their hairstyles looked completely natural. We'll start with Feng Kang and Shui Lingxin. And Yi Yuan, with his bad boy good looks, had a well-maintained complexion. Thanks to the makeup artist's adept handiwork, he looked years younger than his actual age. In fact, he looked exactly the same age as Crown Prince Feng Kang from the drama series. He was wearing rich, luxurious purple-black dragon robes and a crown made of gold and jade. He was bursting with charisma from the moment he stood in front of the camera, emulating pride and nobility from his eyes to his bones. It was as if a descendant of the dragon himself had graced them with his presence. He was the very personification of the phrase, "You are all beneath me." As expected of an adept actor, he made no mistakes throughout the photo shoot. Then, it was Guan Li's turn. She was wearing simple, light green robes, just like the ones in the promotional video. Her plain style served to further emphasize her exquisite, refined features, and she looked even more beautiful than ever. From the clear look in her eyes to the girlish liveliness she exuded and the spiritual aura of the sequestered mountain forest, everything flattered her perfectly. One couldn't help feeling utterly refreshed at the sight of her. It was no wonder Yan Yan had lost to Guan Li. Si Huang had long been aware of the difference in skill between the pair. After Yi Yuan and Guan Li were finished with their individual pictures, it was Si Huang's turn. Si Huang walked on set on his own initiative before Director Liu called for him. The photographer was aware of Si Huang's status as a newbie, so he had made mental notes to give him reminders. After all, a good actor didn't necessarily equal a good model. This wasn't his first time. However, as soon as Si Huang stepped in front of the camera, he felt a marked change in the aura around them. The amount of charisma he exuded was more shocking than in Yi Yuan and Guan Li's charisma. One gentle sweep of a glance toward the photographer exuded so much elegance that he shivered. A layer of goosebumps erupted along his arm. Gasp! This kid has more hidden talents, Director Liu murmured. People who had true substance in this industry were usually very sensitive and reactive to auras. Thus, Guan Li and An Yiyuan immediately felt Si Huang's silent aura change. Amateurs could also sense that she had suddenly turned into a completely different person. However, they would not be able to find out how she had done it and would be instantly pulled in. The young man in the lunar white long robes sat in a wheelchair. His long black hair, which cascaded down his waist, was perfectly smooth. His fair face seemed flawless beneath the bright camera lights, like the glow of a jade stone. His exquisite features seemed to be carefully carved from fine jade. His eyes were slightly squinted in an indolent manner, his lashes curled up naturally, and his gaze was light and airy, completely weightless yet not exactly lifeless. Instead, it was as if nothing in this world could possibly hold the gaze of this peerless young man. The photographer was momentarily stunned. Then, his eyes sparkled as if he'd been struck by inspiration. No one else in this world would ever spark more inspiration in him than this young man. The famous photographer's eyes and mind were now completely immersed in this ancient Chinese setting as if he'd been lured by this young man, who had descended from the heavens. His fingers clicked the shutter button on his camera over and over again. Si Huang was perfectly capable of calmly changing his pose and gaze. She exuded a consistent flow of arrogance from beginning to end. The pride she emulated was different from An Yiyuan's commanding arrogance. One might even argue that she showed no signs of pride at all but an indifference to the world around her. An earth-shattering event could happen right in front of her, and she wouldn't care at all. That was the very peak of pride. If one were to describe An Yiyuan as a descendant of the dragon, Si Huang was a celestial in human form. The perception of the two parties was not on the same level. Yan Yan's gonna be in trouble, An Yiyuan whispered. Guan Li gently curled the corners of her lips, displaying a hint of derision. However, her gaze remained locked on Si Huang the entire time. Yan Yan, who was situated not too far away, already looked very pale in the face. Her body trembled, and her hands were now balled into fists. The reason behind her slow burn was that, although Si Huang's gaze never seemed to lose focus in every pose during the photoshoot, in reality, she kept her attention on Yan Yan. However, she never really looked at Yan Yan, as if she were nothing more than an insect, someone not even worth her attention. This was an intangible form of torture and pressure for the feeble-minded Yan Yan, especially since Si Huang was doing it on purpose, suppressing her with her acting prowess. Si Huang, is it? Could you change it up? For example, perhaps you're looking at an enemy? Or a lover? The photographer made a stream of requests. Si Huang finally opened her half-closed eyes. Her dark pupils were like a whisk of an incomparable sword, cold and merciless, icy, sharp, pristine, and unbreakable. Everyone was stunned at the sight of her gaze, and a chill seeped into their bones. Yan Yan, who was the main recipient of Si Huang's gaze, had an even bigger reaction than the rest and tumbled to the ground. The photographer instinctively captured this incomparable picture in his dazed stupor. The chill in Si Huang's eyes dissipated like melted ice before everyone could come back to their senses, like melted snow, as if a warm sun had shone upon her, creating sparkling, crystal waves. Her faint pink lips curved at the corners quietly, like a proud plum blossom compromised by a long winter, parting from its leaves and branches and falling gently on the snowy ground to join its companions. It had set aside its arrogance, put away its thorns and armor, and put its gentleness and true feelings on display. This was a tenderness that no one could ever resist. The set was so silent that only the sound of the shutter button of the photographer's camera could be heard. Si Huang's outstanding performance was completely obvious, all the way until she stepped off the set. Everyone looked at her differently. The looks in the women's eyes were the most enthusiastic, as if they would probably have thrown themselves at him if they hadn't been at work on the movie set. Was that on purpose? Guan Li asked icily when Si Huang walked over. Si Huang blinked at her, looking very innocent. A smile flashed across Guan Li's eyes, and even the iciness on her face seemed to have thawed. Tisk, Goddess Guan has never been nice to me. You're amazing, Si Huang, An Yiyuan exclaimed, stroking his chin. I'm nothing compared to you, Si Huang replied, smiling at An Yiyuan. You walk past a group of beautiful women and emerge unaffected by their charm. An Yiyuan's smile froze in place, making him feel an itch in the back of his teeth. The smile on Guan Li's lips grew more prominent than ever. The trio was the picture of peak aesthetic value as they stood together, and the staff members around them howled internally. Women. Ooh, Queen Guan is so lucky, she's surrounded by two handsome men like them. Ah, stop showing off. Men. FCK, Goddess Guan is smiling. So what if they're good looking? So what if they're good with women? So what if they're good at acting? What the FCK? Are they really that great? We mere mortals don't stand a chance. Maybe we should just die, go back to our maker, and see if he can reconstruct us. What the hell are you doing? I asked for a smile, not a funny face. I asked for a melancholic look, not a bawling face. Is your mind filled with sh*t? How could someone like you possibly be an actress? Director Lu's enraged, merciless screams interrupted Si Huang's conversation with the group and the thoughts of the other crew members. Si Huang turned toward Yan Yan, who looked very wretched while standing on set. Her head clearly wasn't in the game, and her expression was a mixture of sadness, happiness, anger, and resentment, all these emotions twisted into one. It was no wonder Director Lu was so angry. She'd had two smooth examples to look at in Si Huang's stunning performance. Yan Yan's mistakes were inexcusable. Director Lu understood that one of the reasons involved was Si Huang's intention to take revenge. However, first of all, Si Huang had not complained or argued. Secondly, she had not deliberately caused trouble. She had arrived on set and used her acting prowess to steamroll her spirit. Director Lu had no reason to pick on Si Huang, so Yan Yan's innate weakness was to blame. She had succumbed to pressure before filming had even begun, allowing her state of mind to be affected and losing control of her emotions. After a few tries, the photographer looked sullen too. He put down his camera, expressed his displeasure, and refused to continue. Do you have any idea how precious Louis's time is? Director Lu's angry yells rang out again. Do you really think that he'd give you the time of the day and take your pictures if it weren't for old Tai? Get out of my sight and think about what you've done. If you keep up this horrid performance, I will have the second female lead recast. Wah! Yan Yan was already at a breaking point. She could feel everyone staring at her gloatingly after Director Lu chastised her. Everyone was staring at her as if she were a joke. She burst into tears on the spot and cried, "Why are you picking on me? It's all Si Huang's fault. He scared me and stared at me with that look in his eyes. If he hadn't." Surprisingly, the photographer, Louis, chuckled before Director Lu could say anything. "Lu Shu, I'm sorry to say this, but I tried to be nice. This kid is going to drag the sovereign journey through the mud with her questionable abilities. You're slipping up. How could you cast someone like her in old Tai's production?" Director Lu's face drained of color, then turned very green. Louis shrugged. "As you've said, let's observe her next performance. I'm not going to continue the shoot if this goes on. You can always hire someone with better skills." Director Lu knew that Louis was a man of his word, and he was very good at his job. He turned around and snapped at the weeping Yan Yan. "Did you not understand what I said? What are you waiting for?" Yan Yan completely forgot about her tears after hearing his angry roar. She was both humiliated and enraged, and she had no choice but to leave at once. Her manager, Zhou Jian, immediately pulled her aside as soon as she walked off to coax her while covering her mouth, afraid that she might have a scathing outburst. Yan Yan's tantrum did not affect Si Huang and the rest. They took photos in pairs after their individual photo shoots, followed by some group photos. And Yiyuan and Guan Li, who were cold and indifferent to each other off-set, immediately got into character as soon as they were in front of the camera. Their eyes seemed to speak to each other. Crown Prince Feng Kang's silent forbearance of his growing feelings and Shui Lingxin's passionate and straightforward nature were all conveyed brilliantly by the look in their gazes. The pair took different poses, including having their backs against each other, one of them staring at the other's back, then moving so close to one another that they were inches away from kissing. They silently exhibited a wave of love, hatred, passion, and revenge from every single angle. Si Huang joined them somewhere in the middle of the session and had a standoff with An Yiyuan in a portrait alone with Guan Li. An Yiyuan and Guan Li seriously raised the bar when posing with Si Huang, probably because they were determined to avoid being outdone by the newbie. Regardless of whether there was a hostile or a harmonious aura, the crew members greatly enjoyed the sight of it all. This was especially true when they were informed that they had to take a group picture together. The wicked smile on An Yiyuan's face disappeared, getting replaced by a serious expression instead. Guan Li instinctively took a deep breath. The pair shared a look and sensed each other's predicament. They sensed each other's state of mind too. A newbie, of all people, had pushed them into this position. They weren't sure if they should laugh or cry. Si Huang's explosive aura was simply too terrifying. They had to pull out all the stops, or they would be squashed and overshadowed by this newcomer. And Yi Yuan and Guan Li took a short break to change into new costumes and redo their makeup. They emerged a few minutes later, Yi Yuan in black and gold dragon robes and Guan Li with a headpiece with gold and pearls that dangled as she walked inserted below her hair bun. She had pink cherry blossom makeup and was wearing colorful, luxuriant robes in a mixture of dark green and sapphire blue. The new costumes elevated the pair's aura and appearance to such new levels of exquisiteness that no one dared look at them directly. Si Huang, however, was wearing the same lunar white long robes with her hair cascading down her shoulders, just as immaculate as ever. The crew members were shocked when the pair returned on set and joined her. Despite the pair's powerful movie star attire, she did not seem to pale in comparison to them. On the contrary, she looked even more striking than ever, like a beautiful piece of jade, lofty and separate from the mortal world, smooth, flawless, and untainted by even a speck of dust. Director Liu was stunned. He had never expected this to happen. Regardless of how remarkable Si Huang was or the importance of Mr. Qinji's role, the leading roles belonged to two separate people. It would have been fine if they were evenly matched, but they simply couldn't have Si Huang stealing their thunder. He moved his lips hesitantly, as he simply couldn't bring himself to ask Si Huang to dim his presence or ask the makeup artist to make him uglier. "Do you have any idea how expensive my time is?" Louis suddenly snapped. "You're actors. You should be well aware of your jobs. Am I supposed to teach you?" Si Huang and the rest quickly grunted in reply before he could continue and respectively got into character. Director Liu realized that he was acting like a baffled insider. Expanding one's aura and charm was a mandatory requirement for any actor. Well, and Yi Yuan and Guan Li had seemingly sensed Si Huang's threat, so after they slightly changed their expressions, no one could ignore them either. Si Huang and the rest stood together, yet all three of them looked in different directions. And Yi Yuan's hair was meticulously styled to match his coronet. He extended his hand to the front, balling his hand within his thick, wide sleeves into a fist. His expression was blank as he lowered his eyelids ever so slightly, as if he were standing at the pinnacle of excellence, staring down at the world and holding the planet in the palms of his hands. Guan Li placed one hand over the other in front of her lower abdomen, looking perfectly prim and proper. Her peerless, beautiful face was cold and solemn. Her lashes were curled, and her eyes sparkled as usual, but they were like deep, dark, bottomless pools. Her calm demeanor concealed an undercurrent of a plethora of thoughts that could not be described. Her painted red lips curved into a silent smile. She was enchantingly beautiful, like an exquisite work of art. Si Huang sat in his wheelchair, already shorter than the pair height-wise. However, he untied his outer jacket belt, allowing it to drape freely. He placed his left arm on the armrest, propping his jaw on his hand and tilting his head ever so slightly. His smooth, silky black hair rippled down his shoulders. He had a smile at the corners of his lips. His pupils were gentle and limpid as he lowered his eyelids and stared at his outstretched right hand. Similar to an Yi Yuan but with his fingers outstretched, flashing his white, jade-like fingertips. He seemed naturally comfortable and relaxed, as if a faint breeze was dancing on his fingertips, allowing flowers to fall and then cling greedily onto the warmth of his hands. The camera clicked away in silence once again. Everyone held their breath as they watched them. The sight of an Yi Yuan and Guan Li stirred a sense of deep sorrow and grief, but when they noticed Si Huang, they would feel a cold, gentle breeze brushing away the gloominess from their hearts and would not be able to tear their eyes away from him. This scene depicted the conclusion of their characters' growth perfectly. And Yi Yuan had become a successful ruler, awesome and intimidating, holding the world in the palms of his hands. However, he did not look happy. His eyes were filled with wild ambition, and he had lost the recklessness of his youth. Guan Li ruled over the palace harem and had become the most revered woman in the world. She was wearing the most beautiful dresses and the most luxurious jewelry. Her grasp on etiquette had become effortless and completely natural. She was refined beyond compare, like a work of art that could only be admired and not touched. She was well versed in hiding certain things in the depths of her gaze and no longer expressed all of her feelings in a straightforward manner. Her witty, vivacious streak had now completely disappeared. They had changed. Years and experience had changed them, allowing them both to gain and lose things. By the time they had grown so powerful and achieved everything they had ever wanted, they'd realized that they had forgotten who they had once been and had lost everything that had made them unique forevermore. As the audience grieved over this reality, one person remained constant and unchanged. He was wearing white robes, he'd had black hair from the very beginning, and he was sitting by watching flowers bloom and wither. Objects might remain the same, but people did not. The only exception was this man, who was still the same as ever, except with a heightened level of elegance and charm, his smile more mesmerizing than ever. Perhaps, this was because he now had a sense of yearning in his heart, someone or something that filled his memories. As the world changed beyond recognition for the sake of power, love, and hatred, Mr. Shinji's timeless gentleness seemed even rarer and more precious than ever. Sigh, Director Liu exclaimed, his eyes a mix of complicated emotions. He knew that An Yiyuan and Guan Li had done very well and had even performed extraordinarily. However, should Si Huang's role be considered an unfair advantage, or were his talents too overpowering? Regardless, he knew that the two old veterans who had enjoyed a long reign of popularity had lost to Si Huang, a newcomer. That wasn't to say that they were not extraordinary enough. The problem was that Si Huang was even more extraordinary than they were. It would have been fine if he had overshadowed them in physical beauty alone, but he was flawless at exuding charm, using his acting skills, exhibiting photogenic qualities, and smizing. He must be an evil spirit. Director Liu let out a secret gasp when he remembered Si Huang's age and academic major. Then, Louis snapped his fingers, indicating that this was perfection. Only then did Si Huang lift her gaze. Before she could stop smiling, she noticed a figure standing not too far away, a figure that should not have been there at all. She narrowed her eyes. The tall man stood in the dim light near a corner with heaps of equipment. His face was hidden in the darkness, concealed from view. However, his towering figure and the inexplicable feeling that he drummed into her heart told Si Huang that this man was Qin Fan. He stood as straight as a spear, like a cheetah concealed in darkness. Not only had he put away the dangerous aura around him, but he had even concealed every trace of sparkle in his eyes. Si Huang indifferently turned her gaze away and noticed that Qin Fan was not alone. Even old Tai and Granny Yu had arrived. Granny Yu noticed her gaze and playfully winked at her. Si Huang chuckled. Ah, a woman suddenly screamed. She quickly covered her mouth and blushed before anyone else could chastise her. The other women around her consoled her with an understanding look in their eyes. Si Huang was just too cool, especially in his current get-up. One bright smile of his was like a snow lotus blooming in cracked ice. It was completely normal for a woman to be struck by shock. After all, she hadn't recovered from the beautiful sight just yet. An Yiyuan and Guan Li were facing outward, so they had naturally noticed old Tai and his wife when Si Huang had lifted her head. The pair immediately looked very respectful and greeted the couple. Old Tai, Madam Yu, what are you doing here? Director Liu hurriedly got to his feet and cried out in surprise. Then, he ordered a crew member to pull out 2 chairs. Granny Yu sat down and smiled. Don't mind us, please carry on. Old Tai sat next to her and nodded at Director Liu. Director Liu poured some tea, which had initially been meant for him, for the pair. Then, he turned around and went back to work, until he remembered the one person left. The vein on his forehead twitched as he yelled, Yan Yan, it's your turn, what are you waiting for? Yan Yan was well aware of who they were. She had somewhat managed to suppress her emotions, as she didn't dare pull anything in front of the 2 great Buddhas. She put on an appropriate smile and, thanks to Zhou Jian's encouragement, walked over. Has His Highness finished his photo shoot? Granny Yu casually asked. Old Tai, who had just taken a sip of tea, spat. He received a disgusted glare from his old companion, and his face twitched. Director Liu and the other crew members were even more stunned. His Highness? Who is she referring to? Crown Prince Feng Kang? The future emperor? Something just doesn't add up? Yan Yan's lips froze in place before they could form a full smile. Si Huang smiled calmly. No, not yet. I have one more session with her. Granny Yu had probably arrived late, so she had not managed to witness Si Huang's collaboration with Yan Yan. Then go ahead, she replied. The great Buddha had spoken. Director Liu had no choice but to comply. How is the sea kid related to Madame Yu? Old Tai didn't seem to know him, he wondered to himself. And Yi Yuan and Guan Li walked off, leaving Si Huang to straighten out her loose outer jacket. He looked like a refined gentleman. In stark contrast, Yan Yan remained rooted to the ground. She finally shuffled timidly to Si Huang's side when Director Liu yelled at her again. Her character, Ling Shuangshuang, the secondary female protagonist, was an unrivaled beauty. She had impressive good looks and family background and was the embodiment of grace. However, she was sharp-sighted and consumed by ambition. She loved Crown Prince Feng Kang's position and power, yet she also loved Mr. Qinji's peerless elegance and talent. She believed that no man could ever escape her charm. However, in reality, the men who caught her eye were not interested in her at all. It was fine with Crown Prince Feng Kang, who allowed her some measure of courtesy. Mr. Qinji refused to give her the time of the day, which hurt her pride. Subsequently, her love and hatred for Mr. Qinji increased. Yan Yan knew that she had to portray her love and hatred for Si Huang. She took a deep breath and let her gaze linger on Si Huang's face. For some reason, her heart began to race as she stared at him and her feelings stirred. It wasn't hard to fall for a man like that. If only he would fall for her, then she would be envied by all women. Yan Yan's gaze gradually slipped into character. Zhou Jian, who was watching her and breaking into a cold sweat, silently heaved a sigh of relief. Unfortunately, his joy was premature. Si Huang, who had finished straightening out her clothes, lifted her head and looked Yan Yan in the eye. He raised his jaw, his smooth features coming into full view. He was clearly in a wheelchair, so he was much shorter than most, yet his eyes could make one feel as if he were looking at them in disdain. Yan Yan's expression stiffened again. She had met the old CEO of Prime Entertainment, Si Jian. People in high positions always looked as if they were better than the rest. She would feel nervous and constrained in his presence. However, she now felt that Si Huang was even more intimidating than Si Jian. There was no trace of emotion in his eyes, but she clearly felt a piercing chill and a feeling of disgust that reached her very bones. Even though she was lucky enough to hold his gaze, she was nothing more than trash. Louis chuckled again. Hey, young lady. Am I supposed to teach you what to do? You're supposed to show your desperation, which stems from your love and hatred for him. Stand next to him and put your arm around him, but don't actually touch him, understand? You should know what kind of expression to use. If you don't, just shed a few tears. Do you understand? No one believed that Louis was helping Yan Yan out of kindness, as his laughter was filled with mockery. Granny Yu sensed the strange atmosphere. What's going on? She asked Director Liu. A small conflict between the youngsters, Director Liu replied helplessly. Has that stupid girl been pushing His Highness around? Granny Yu snapped with a glare. Director Liu and the crew members were speechless. When have you ever seen her pushing him around? They wondered. Granny Yu was still in rage. That girl has a weird look in her eyes. She seems pretentious. She's obviously not thinking straight. How could His Highness possibly have started the fight? Director Liu was sweating. You're absolutely right, madam. Granny Yu had more to say, but old Tai grabbed her hand. You've never called me your highness. My dearest Empress Dowager, won't you calm down and watch? Granny Yu scoffed. We've heard of old Tai's love for his wife. Looks like the rumors were true, Director Liu and the crew members thought collectively. Yan Yan could hear the whispers around her. She slowly inched towards Si Huang, enduring his gaze. Si Huang's eyes added an extra layer of stress upon her with every step she took, just like the sea, threatening to swallow her whole, drawing her deeper and deeper, growing increasingly more suffocating. Breathing became even more difficult than ever. She finally reached Si Huang. Finally, Yan Yan didn't need to endure his gaze any longer and managed to recompose her normal expression. Old Tai and the rest are watching. I have to do my best. My path to stardom will be bright once I get into old Tai's good graces. Yan Yan chanted over and over again in her mind. A smile appeared on her face. She knew that Si Huang wasn't staring at her anymore, so she knew that she could do her best. The woman was wearing bright red robes, and her raven hair was adorned with gold and jade ornaments that made her look absolutely exquisite. She had a pure, beautiful face, and her eyes were enchanting. She extended her hands as if she were about to embrace the man, yet a shapeless object was in the way, preventing her from truly embracing him. Yan Yan looked undoubtedly beautiful thanks to her exquisite makeup. However, she paled in comparison to Si Huang. Her outstretched hands were white, delicate, and beautiful, but the audience's attention would certainly focus on Si Huang's arm first, which was casually placed on his armrest. This was obviously a careless pose, yet, in comparison to his hands, Yan Yan's fingers did not seem pretty enough, and their movements seemed stiff. Si Huang paid no attention to Yan Yan's expression behind her. She switched from polite elegance to a cold, grim expression. She lifted her jaw ever so slightly and mildly arched her brows. She kept her gaze straight ahead, her pupils looking like obsidians. It was as if a dark green flame was alight in their depths. She pursed her light pink lips into a straight line, and the luster on her face dimmed. This made her seem even grimmer than ever and gave her a majestic aura. She was like a god others would seek out for help. "This angry looks just like him," Granny Yu mumbled absent-mindedly. "Just how many tricks does this evil spirit have up his sleeve?" Director Lu cursed internally. Everything else was obvious. The women looked excited and entranced, and even the men couldn't tear their gazes away. Yan Yan noticed their reactions. Her mind immediately plunged into a whirlwind. What happened? What did Si Huang do this time? Why are they all looking at him like that? She wondered. Her messed-up emotions drove her out of focus. As a result, the expression on her face became increasingly stiffer. "Is the photographer done yet? Is he finished? Can we change poses already?" Yan Yan stole a look at her manager, Zhou Jian, and realized that his expression was distorted and he was falling apart. Subsequently, her state of mind immediately crumbled. "Lu Shu, I'm going to stop taking pictures of her now." Louis lifted his head and smirked. "Her presence is like a tiny stain. She'll tarnish my perfect work of art." Lu Shu had nothing to say. Yan Yan might not be aware of this, but the audience could see it all crystal clear. She, who stood behind Si Huang, was not even fit to be looked at. Her pretty face was supposedly enough to make everything else pale in comparison, but Si Huang's presence was too overwhelming, and her acting skills were far too superior. Yan Yan was unable to keep up. Her expression looked stiff no matter what she did, and her gaze seemed artificial. This woman was simply not good enough. "Xiao Lu, there are plenty of good young saplings around. Why do you ever choose her?" Granny Yu spoke up again. Those words were the straw that broke the camel's back for Yan Yan. Director Lu's reaction was exactly what Yan Yan had feared. "It's my fault. I'll take care of it. It will not affect the Sovereign Journey's production," he told Granny Yu. Then, he locked eyes with Yan Yan. She immediately understood when she saw the cold, distant, merciless glint in his gaze. "He's going to fire me." She may have signed a contract, but why should he fear liquidated damages when Yu Shulan, one of the great Buddhas, had spoken? I'm sorry. Yan Yan was too afraid to unleash her frustration on Director Lu and the rest, regardless of how much resentment she felt. Her face turned a red-purple shade as she faced them and begged. "I'm actually not feeling well today, so I couldn't get into character. Please give me another chance. I promise I'll deliver." Louis didn't speak. Granny Yu did not look at her. Director Lu frowned. Suddenly, they heard a small chuckle. Si Huang turned around and looked at her. "Give it a try then." Most crew members felt that Si Huang was being too gallant. It was bad enough that he had such good looks and amazing acting skills, yet he had a kind heart to boot. The female staff howled internally and fretted over this young man. Such kind-heartedness did not bode well for people in the entertainment industry. He'd be pushed around and manipulated to death. Director Lu and the rest, however, made a mental note. "We must never underestimate this kid. He's obviously out to eradicate her." Granny Yu did not object to Si Huang's suggestion, so Director Lu indulged him. This was clearly an opportunity. Zhou Jian was holding on to a small sliver of hope. He cheered Yan Yan on with an earnest look in his eyes. Unfortunately, Yan Yan's state of mind was even more chaotic than ever. She was too close to Si Huang. She could see Si Huang's eyes and expression very clearly when he turned around. His eyes seemed too clear and incisive and reflected her twisted face. Yan Yan would have preferred it if his eyes had been filled with malice and rejection instead of this clear, bottomless gaze. It served as a foil for her flustered state, as if she wasn't even good enough to compete with him. Smack! The entire set went silent. The look on everyone's faces changed at once. They stared at Yan Yan and Si Huang with varying expressions. Sorry, Si Huang pushed his leg away as he stared at Yan Yan, who had fallen. It was a reflex. No one blamed Si Huang. After all, everyone had seen Yan Yan making the first move. She was actually crazy enough to reach out to slap Si Huang. Granny Yu leapt to her feet like a tigress protecting her cub. Get her out of here. Maybe you should stop watching. Old Tai began to speak but was stopped by a single glare from Granny Yu. I'm sorry, Madam Yu. A great woman like you would never stoop to the level of a petty girl, right? Please do not lower yourself to our Yan Yan's level. She's just a senseless child. She's used to being spoiled. Zhou Jian rushed to help Yan Yan up to her feet, bowing and nodding to Granny Yu and the rest while apologizing continuously. She's an adult. How could you possibly call her a child? Granny Yu sneered. She's certainly got some nerve to show her spoiled attitude off in front of me. Before Zhou Jian could apologize any further, the next part of her exclamation struck them so hard that their faces fell like dead ashes. I don't think this girl should belong in the entertainment industry, nor does she have the talent for it. She should leave as soon as possible. Granny Yu was one of the leading authorities in the entertainment industry. Yan Yan had no substantial family background or support. Granny Yu's declaration had sealed her fate. I won't leave. Why should I leave? What did I do wrong? He was singling me out. Are you all blind? Didn't you see that? He hit me. I'm going to sue him. Zhou Jian, let me go. Let me go. I won't take this. Sniff, sob, sob. Yan Yan knew what would happen if she left now. Left at her wit's end, she had no choice but to break down and sob. Please return the costume and props before you leave, Director Liu reminded her with a stony face. Ooh, that's gotta hurt, everyone else thought. Yan Yan's tragic removal from the set promptly concluded this absurd drama. Even the male crew members did not feel pity for her. Why didn't we notice how horrible Yan Yan's acting was? What about her terrible personality? A male crew member whispered to his colleague as he moved some equipment. His male colleague scratched his head. Her IQ is horrible too. I never imagined that. I guess you really can't believe what people say until you actually see it for yourself. She was such a phony. Du Chang, who was nearby, overheard their conversation. Her heart was still racing excitedly. She felt a strong swell of glory and pride. She was really excited. She had to talk to her little friends about this. She sent the video recording on her phone to the Order of Knights Penguin Group with only one caption. Rose with thorns. Acting skills, crushed. You have been honorably defeated in your triumphant territory. His Highness is just that amazing. Du Chang put her phone down after that and did not check for replies. She watched Si Huang. She suddenly remembered that, not too long ago, his kind, confident, smiling face had told her to just sit tight and watch. In the end, it was decided that the role of the second female protagonist of the Sovereign Journey would be recast. Granny Yu gave a personal recommendation and asked Director Liu to contact her. Then, she asked, is Xiao Wangwang done for the day? Director Liu chose to ignore her startling form of address and replied, yes, Si Huang doesn't have many scenes today. Naturally, as the author of the Sovereign Journey, Granny Yu knew this very well. However, she smiled gleefully as if it had only just hit her. Xiao Wangwang, won't you join your granny for a meal? She asked Si Huang. Okay, Granny, but let me change first, okay? Si Huang replied naturally. Old Tai shot her a look. Who could possibly fawn over someone like this? She's thrown the word, Granny, around so easily. However, Granny Yu was giddier than ever. One could see laugh lines at the tips of her eyes. Her voice was crisp and full of joy as she said, oh my, you look fine just like that. You always look amazing, my Xiao Wangwang. Actually, Granny Yu's skills were superior when it came to fawning. Si Huang certainly wasn't going to have a meal in her movie costume, so she let that suggestion slide. She left the stage, walked into the dressing room, cleaned up, and then walked out. The man from ancient China with the air of a fallen celestial had now turned back into a modern-day Prince Charming. She was wearing a white shirt with a pale blue jacket and cream-colored casual pants. She was also wearing white canvas shoes. Her youthful vigor was on full display. As netizens would say on the internet, she was a hunk. Everyone else soon realized that Si Huang's complexion looked even more flawless after he removed his makeup. His lips had more color, and they were such a bright red shade that one couldn't help feeling the urge to take a bite. The single man wept. FCK. It's bad enough that he's good looking with makeup on, but he's just as hot without it. What chance do average men like us have? Granny Yu's eyes immediately lit up. At her age, she adored the young clean-cut good boy look, which was not overly soft or stiff. Most of all, she had never had kids, so she felt even fonder of Si Huang and had a sense of kinship. You can go back and get some rest, Si Huang told Yu Shi before leaving. Yu Shi was certain that Granny Yu and her husband would not harm Si Huang, so he agreed. However, just as he watched Si Huang and Granny Yu walk out, he noticed a tall, dark figure emerging from the shadows and tagging along. One simply couldn't overlook this person. From the moment he laid eyes on him, he was stunned. Yu Shi was speechless. Have I let him go too soon? Who is that guy? When did he get here? Granny Yu chose a restaurant on Mount Early Dawn with an authentic, classical Chinese flavor. The restaurant was named Shang Garden and was a mountain villa. The ingredients of their meals were homegrown, so they could guarantee that no chemicals were used in the farming process and everything was clean and organic. Meal prices were comparatively more expensive, as most of the patrons were from upper-class society. Granny Yu and Si Huang clicked very well and chatted happily throughout the meal. Old Tai would chime in from time to time, but Qin Fan remained completely silent. Si Huang excused herself in the middle of the meal to use the washroom. She obviously used the men's room. She calmly walked into one of the cubicles and emerged a few minutes later, only to feel a hand on her shoulder. Hey, baby. You've got the wrong place. This is the men's room. The strange man spoke in a derisive tone, and his breath smelled of alcohol. You want a man, don't you? Come with me. He stared at Si Huang with tipsy, glazed eyes. His Adam's apple quivered as he forcibly dragged Si Huang into a cubicle. Si Huang shook him off and twisted the man's arm with a calm look on her face. Then, she walked out the door, not caring where he landed. You little SLT. Do you have any idea who I am? His infuriated roar came from behind her. Si Huang's footsteps came to an abrupt stop. She would have given in and turned around if Qin Fan hadn't appeared in the doorway. The man's angry yells behind her sounded all too familiar. She wasn't sure when the tall man had arrived. He stood at the washroom door and was at least 188 centimeters tall, which made him look particularly imposing. He was holding a half-lit cigarette in between his fingers. His cold, handsome face was blurred by its smoky mist. His abstruse eyes had such a sharp gaze that they felt like a knife running painfully down one's skin. He stared at Si Huang for 2 seconds with an expressionless look on his face, then strode in. He always took large and orderly steps that easily gave off a kind of intimidation, like huge waves threatening to wash over anyone. Si Huang's gaze was clear and placid. Her body was ready to defend itself. To her surprise, Qin Fan walked right past her. Bang. Arg. Si Huang jumped. She turned around and saw Qin Fan flipping the man, who was wearing a suit, with one kick. Si Huang had personally experienced his formidable strength. She wasn't surprised when she saw the adult-sized man being sent 2 meters away with one kick and slamming against the wall. However, Qin Fan's next kick resulted in sounds of bones cracking. He had broken the man's hand, the very one that he had used to touch Si Huang. That surprised her. What is he doing? Qin Fan looked at the man as if he were nothing more than trash. He clicked his shoes, then turned to the mystified Si Huang and said, "Next time, don't be so nice to people like him." Si Huang raised a brow and didn't answer. Qin Fan frowned. You have the face of a weakling, so you should be smarter than this. The world is filled with all kinds of weirdos. The face of a weakling? Hee, Si Huang chuckled. She was dressed in a more clean-cut, youthful style today. She already had an exquisite, beautiful face even when there was no expression on her face at all. She was tall and straight like a poplar tree too. Now, she was smiling. Qin Fan, who was looking right at her, suddenly heard the sound of something cracking. His mind entered a trance, and his eyes glazed over. Si Huang walked past Qin Fan and stood in front of the man in the suit. She reached out and grabbed the man's collar as he groaned weakly. No one would have imagined that her slender, well-proportioned figure, which did not look strong at all, could have the strength to easily dangle a 170-something centimeter adult man in midair as if he was nothing more than a small chick. She hadn't gotten a good look at the man's face at first. She was only reminded of him when she heard his angry screams. At this point, she still couldn't be bothered to see what the man, who might look human but had a horrid mouth and an even worse heart, looked like. She simply dragged the man into a cubicle and dunked his end inside. Qin Fan raised one brow. Si Huang calmly pressed the flush button. Gurgle, the man struggled. His moans were drowned by toilet bowl water and weren't heard. Si Huang methodically removed his belt. Smack, she whipped the man with the belt. Arg, blub. The toilet bowl tank was refilled, and Si Huang pressed the flush button again. Every time the man struggled, Si Huang calmly whipped him with his belt. The cycle was repeated 4 times. Finally, the man stopped moving. Qin Fan had finished his cigarette. He flicked his wrist, tossed the cigarette into the toilet bowl with the man's hand, and said, "Old Tai and the rest are waiting for us." Si Huang's eyes were shaped like crescent moons. Her lips bloomed into a casual, macho smile. The face of a weakling, huh? The raised pitch at the end of her sentence made Qin Fan's heart stiffen, especially when it was paired with the smile on her face. It's just unimaginable. How could there possibly be someone like, Qin Fan couldn't find the words to describe this. He had never felt his heart race like this before. Si Huang noticed that the tall man's gaze had grown increasingly more terrifying and more intimidating than ever. Suddenly, he took a big step toward her, reached out, and